Welcome to the MDS third Annual Cybersecurity Conference. Thank you again for joining us today. We hope, despite us not being in person, that you'll still find this event enjoyable and worthwhile. So the agenda today, we're going to start off with our MDS keynote panel, Emerging Technologies. We'll move straight into our executive panel discussing surviving security breaches. Then we'll jump to two of our sponsors' speaking session, one by OneTrust Vendorpedia, the other by Imperva. Then we'll take you into the security awareness training for the remote users, followed by another two sponsor speaking sessions, one by Data and the other one by Netrix. And then we'll end with a technical session discussing securing digital transformation in business applications. At the end, we'll do a quick raffle and answer any questions. Q&A is open right now. I will be fielding them throughout the presentations. If we don't have time to answer all of them, we'll email or call you. We've uploaded some polls and some handouts, so please check them out. That also includes the English and Spanish version of the cybersecurity booklet. And there you'll be able to find more about our speakers and presenters. And we'll also be having some of our other presenters joining us throughout the presentations. Hopefully it won't be too distracting for you. If you do have any issues, please let me know. You can private chat me. My name is Samantha Orzalak. So right now, let's jump off with our first panel. Jason Rebar, our moderator, will take you into the presentation.
Thank you, Sam, and welcome again to everyone joining us today. As Sam mentioned, my name is Jason Rebar. I am an engineer here at the security practice at MDS. We wanted to start the conference today, as we have in the past, with a discussion amongst our security practice leads about some of the important current and upcoming solutions from some of our top partners. As we know, day-to-day operations have changed for many organizations. However, the security and compliance needs for our users, our devices, and our data cannot be forgotten. Let's start off with some introductions. Jason, why don't you kick us off, talk a little bit about what you do here at MDS and your experience.
Sure. So Jason Polche, infrastructure practice lead at MDS. I've been here, about 10, 11 years at this point. So a lot has changed over the course of that decade, right? Technology-wise, company-wise, right? Mainly, a lot of shift towards cloud technology. So while we, years ago, we're mostly focusing on building core networks, data centers. Now we're really looking at leveraging cloud-based technologies that are scalable and that have security built into them and that are, have a centralized management platform around them. So we've seen a lot of changes. Obviously, the technology arena is exploding, especially with all the work from home initiatives with COVID. So it's been there's been some rapid changes. We adopt them as we can, and just incorporate the best practices to our new solutions. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Jason. Gene, how about you? You go next.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Gene Silva. I am the practice manager for the productivity and applications team here at MDS. I've been in IT and primarily a messaging architect for about 23 years. All the way back to the Exchange 4.0 days, if some of you are out there that are old enough to remember that. Here at MDS, we work with our customers to plan, design, implement strategies to help them transition from a lot of the legacy platforms, services, applications, and get them into the new modern workplace, right? This new world that we live in. Our primary focus is assisting customers with migration services. We help them with adoption, education, support, and we establish ourselves not just as a vendor, but a long-term valuable partner that throughout their cloud journey, we help enhance how they work. And not only that, but we help maximize the return on their cloud investments.
Perfect. Thank you, Gene. And last but not least, Ash, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do here.
Yep. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Jason. So my name is Ash Marcos. I'm the security and compliance practice lead here at Maureen Data Systems. I've been here at MDS for about 4 or 5 years now. The security practice was fairly new for us, as it's most customers moving into the cloud. making sure the cloud component is secured, but also in addition to the securing the cloud journey is making sure customers meet specific regulatory requirements, starting with privacy and then some of the regulatory requirement. My background, I have different areas from application development at the early stage over 20 years ago to enterprise architecture and now into the security area. Back to you, Reaper.
Perfect. Thanks again to the three of you for being here today. Jason, let's come back to you. Let's talk about a little bit about what you think are the next big solutions coming up in your practice there. Can you talk a little bit about what you think every company here should be aware of?
Yeah, sure. So we can start with a couple of things here. So I guess since, obviously COVID's going on, we have a pandemic, there's a lot of work from home people. We've seen a large shift for secure remote work solutions this year. A couple of those, obviously around the workstation and the collaboration pieces. So I know Gene and Ash will obviously elaborate on these quite in depth, but we'll start with like Windows Virtual Desktop. So we've seen a very large push to get people secure desktops working from home. We've led this initiative with VDI. It's something that we adopted since inception from Microsoft about a little over a year ago, about 13, 14 months ago, when it first came out in preview. So we've gone, full steam ahead with that solution, leveraging the cloud for scalability and security, replacing legacy type VPN solutions. So obviously one of the issues of using a VPN from home is you're now bridging your home network, right, with your corporate network, and then any kind of vulnerabilities you have at home, unpatched. I mean, everything's on Wi-Fi today, right? Refrigerators, TVs, baby monitors, right? I'm sure no one keeps up to date with all the firmware patches on those devices. So making sure that those networks don't have any kind of vulnerabilities exposing your that are on your home network, exposing your corporate network to. So what WVD gives you in a security sense there, right, is it's only screenshots coming back to your desktop. So any of that corporate data never physically touches the network on that home computer, right? And there's other ways to secure even those images with DLP solutions. So that's been a big push. Obviously, there's a big security play around that as well. So antivirus, all the other pieces of security that come into hardening those desktops. And then on the management side as well, Intune, et cetera. So that ties in well to our M365 suite of products. And then also on the collaboration side, we've been seeing a lot with voice requirements. So obviously people working from home, a lot of premise-based PBXs in these big environments, right, where people have desk phones, and it's really hard to consume a desk phone when you're sitting at home, at your desk in your home office. So what we've seen is a big push to cloud-based PBX solutions and integration with those on-premise PBX solutions. So Teams Direct Routing has a lot of enhancements that it can bring to those cloud calling solutions. Again, not really, at least initially, ripping and replacing, so you can still leverage the investment you have on premise, but then adding to it and delivering those DID, that calling capability, to your cloud-based Teams client, so that no matter where you are, you can consume that telephony service and calling service right seamlessly. It's managed centrally. It incorporates all the security policies that are built into the Office 365 platform, so there's no separate security that you have to worry about. So I know, like, with Zoom, there's a lot of security concerns that came up when people started working from home. Teams gives you that centralized management policy behind that, so you don't have to worry about trying to figure out and scramble how to secure this solution right once you deploy it to your users. And I'll say last but not least, we've been seeing now that people are shifting towards cloud, right, with the remote work from home stuff, data center migrations, right? So people now, as those data centers come up for refresh, taking those servers, taking those applications, and then migrating them up to a cloud service. So we lead with Azure, right? We follow the Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework for best practices. Security is wrapped around everything. And this isn't just like simple migrations, right? So some stuff, like Active Directory, simple apps that kind of are lift and shifted, we still follow that approach, but then we really look to modernize those apps when they get migrated. So this can be anywhere from rehosting them onto new operating systems, rebuilding them from scratch, leveraging microservices, container services, cloud native app services, and database services, right? So not just lifting and shifting, but really taking a look inside that application, architecting it in a way that's scalable, that's secure, and that really makes sense for the cloud, so you don't spend more money than you need to. So those are really the three main areas that we've seen really explode the past 6-7 months or so.
I think Jason, he doesn't want to hang out with us anymore. I don't know where he went, but I do know the question. So, Ash, how do you work with Jason in securing his technologies?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sam. So on the security front, like Jason mentioned, and security is wrapped around every technology, especially anything that you touch in the cloud. And security has different aspects of it, right? One is making sure from a risk perspective that our customer understand the risk exposure that they have when they go into the cloud. Is it from a regulatory perspective? Is it internal risk? Is it technical control gaps that they have that they need to address? It could be leveraging existing tools that they have, or upgrading and modernizing their security tools to meet the new cloud platform. So we work very closely. We start typically with an assessment, understanding where the customer is trying to go. So in this case, we talked about, because of COVID, a large portion of our customers are moving into the VDI. Gene will talk about it. Teams collaboration, right? Everyone now wants to adopt team collaboration. The Teams is not anymore just for something to be used to attend a conference. It's actually collaborating, sharing document, integrating it with different cloud providers such as OneDrive and other cloud storage. But also, how do you secure the data? So that leads us into making sure data governance and data security is in place. And then also we leverage tools like the modern workplace from Microsoft, Intune, making sure devices are properly secured, the data on those devices are secure. People are working from home, so now they have the option to use either their personal device or corporate device. Most corporate during the COVID time, they had a hard time giving out laptops, right? There was a shortage of laptop globally, and that led into most companies allowing their employees to leverage their personal devices. But when you allow personal devices to be used, how do you protect those data? So majority of those tools were there. They were just never configured. So working very closely with the team, that's how we were able to secure. Sam?
Perfect, thank you. So, Gene, do you want to elaborate a little bit more about your practice and what you've been focusing on these last few months?
Yeah, and I would say, some of the current and actually the next big solutions all revolve around Microsoft Teams, whether we're talking about onboarding new customers, whether, with this whole new remote work experience, or if we're enhancing the experience for existing customers. Microsoft has announced in Ignite in this past year on their roadmap a ton of new features that are currently in the works and stuff for next year. Some of those features are, for meetings, right? Enhancing the meeting experience, which is what we're all used to now in this new COVID world. Together mode, right? Bringing everyone together in a virtual workspace. Breakout rooms, especially around the education and commercial space, where you can now take specific groups from within a meeting, have them in their own meeting to kind of focus on a specific topic. We have meeting limits going up to 1,000 attendees. Live meetings, the view only feature, 20,000 attendees. We have new meeting room experiences. So now, when as workers are going back to the offices the traditional way. Microsoft is enhancing the way we use Teams, to make a touchless experience. We have meeting casting, where you can actually cast a meeting in a touchless way. Proximity join, where if you're within a certain radius of a meeting, it'll automatically join you. There's dynamic room counting, right? If there's a specific head count limit in a room, there's technology, people counting technology, that can now notify when the limit in the room has been exceeded. We have improved calling experiences. Collaborative calling is what they're calling it, where you can take a call queue and tie it to a Teams channel, where, and as you can imagine, from a help desk perspective, that's really valuable. Chat and collaboration. There's team templates available now, where you can create a template prior to creating a team that has a specific business scenario. It can be around event management, it can be crisis response, it can be an industry specific template. All of this to simplify just getting onboarded, getting a teams going, having specific predefined channels and guidance and apps all built in to this template. We have the enhanced integration with M365, SharePoint home sites and intranet integrating within Teams. Nobody likes to use SharePoint, right, in the intranet world. But now we're bringing it all together right within Teams. We have enhanced Power Platform integration. We have enhanced Power BI integration. And then obviously on top of all this is our security and compliance, right? Because it's not just deploying these services. It's not just creating this new virtual workspace for the employees, but it's securing it, right? We have our 6 pillars of security. We have identity, we have devices, we have apps, we have infrastructure, we have network, we have data. All of these pillars, these areas are what our security team, Ash and his team, focused on, right? We focus on our zero trust architecture, which targets these areas, whether it's identity and access management, threat protection, unified endpoint management, data protection, cloud security. All of these features and all of these areas are, if not more important than the actual productivity and application side of things. So that's kind of what's exciting now. A lot of the things that are happening, it's all Teams, and we're excited here at MDS.
Thank you. Ash, do you have anything to add? How do you usually work with Gene's practice?
Yeah, sure. So Gene touched on most of it, right? Team is becoming the center of collaboration tool. And so basically, with Gene's team as part of the Team's adoption, we want to make sure that security is both in the front, from a cloud security aspect of it, making sure that the Team platform itself is secure. It can be monitored. Some of the operation aspect of the security component is in place. Things like monitoring, alert notification. We leverage the Microsoft Azure Sentinel to monitor as part of the Office 365 components, the Teams activities, right? There's an API integration that can tell you all the activities, both suspicious activities and everything. And then depending on the company, whether it's a regulated company, or if it just needs to follow best practice from a data security, data separation aspect of it, there are built-in security features within both the Microsoft technology and other third-party ecosystem that we can assist the customer to configure to meet any type of regulatory compliance that they have. So it's a collaborative effort. It's before the engagement. We want to make sure the customer understands the security requirement from a cloud adoption perspective, Teams adoption, Teams collaboration, as well as post-project, the monitoring, the continuous improvement and security of the Teams collaboration.
Perfect, thank you. I think Jason is back on. Jason, do you want to take it from here?
Sure. Sorry for dropping off there. It wouldn't be a live event without some technical glitches. But thank you, Ash, for providing that overview. And I guess, Ash, sticking with you, can you talk a little bit about, sounds like you touched on a few of them in discussing Jason and Gene's practice, but can you talk a little bit about some of the top technologies that we're working with here at MDS on the security side?
Yeah, sure. So one of the top security technology we work with is the Microsoft solution. And within the Microsoft solution, there are a couple of them that are market leader disruptor, and primarily they're designed for the modern way of how we're as a digital transformation world that we're moving into is to secure that. Majority of people are very surprised to see Microsoft as the front end of some of this product. Some of them, to mention it from endpoint perspective, Microsoft Defender ATP. So some of the terms that I'm using that's probably old now because there was a huge event last week on Microsoft Ignite that majority of the products were rebranded to expand. But from endpoint security perspective, Microsoft Defender ATP is the market leader. Why it's the market leader? Endpoint security is no longer just securing from antivirus ransomware, right? It's the continuous vulnerability assessment of that device. Gene touched on zero trust. Basically, you don't trust that device, and you continuously verify that device is not compromised. And if that device condition change, you want to apply an automated incident response, right? So there is an intelligence built into it, and this is one of the differentiator with Microsoft, right? The Microsoft Graph built connected to the Microsoft Intelligence Center, and then the continuous monitoring, integrating the Defender ATP with Intune and other tools to automatically remediate. So if it detects a suspicious activity, you open Excel that has a macro, but it's trying to encrypt your entire device. Windows Defender ATP can understand, okay, this is not this is a suspicious activity. I'm going to allow you to use Excel file, but I'm not going to allow you to encrypt it. I'm going to suspend that portion of the activity, notify the SOC team, and if it is a true business need, then they can actually open it in a sandbox in the Windows Defender ATP and see if what that file actually does. And then if it works as you expected, you would allow it. So that's how much the Windows Defender ATP is really powerful and what makes it a differentiator in the marketplace. This is just to give you one of the solution. In the Azure front, there's Azure Security Center, all right, and that's as more companies migrate into the cloud, again, you have to continuously monitor your application, monitor your virtual environment in the cloud, containerization, Kubernetes, different layer of application that are coming in. How do you monitor it? So majority of the Microsoft security tools are native now; they're built into it, and it's well integrated and easy to use, easy to operate. So this is just some of the components from Microsoft, but from other ecosystem, we have Imperva, right? Imperva from structured data, especially SQL data that's out there, or any database, structured database that need to be secure. Uh, Companies like Imperva, we leverage those to secure structured data to make sure that data governance is extended into the structure world. And then another area is privacy. Privacy has become huge globally. Started with GDPR. California has one. New York has one. Brazil has one. There's different of them that's coming. The U.S. federal government is trying to come up with another one that's through FTC that's going to be used nationwide to protect children's privacy, individual privacy. Uh, so we leverage OneTrust. That's one of our go-to privacy platform because it's managing and securing privacy. It's not just the technical aspect of it, but it's also the legal aspect of it that you have to convert into a security control. So OneTrust platform has been one of the market leader for us, and it's been a successful partnership. So these are some of the products, Rebar. Jason?
So actually, I do know the next question. For the three of you,
Thank you. Yes,
what
it's a good, I think, top selection of some of the solutions that we've been working with recently that are going to be important in the future. And you talked a little bit about.
Sam, you want to take over? Jason is.
Yeah. So, where do you guys see your practices, the three of them, going within the next year or so? I mean, I know that's hard because we weren't obviously expecting COVID last year when we asked this question, but based on what's happening, what would you think? And just realize we have 5 minutes left, and we do have one question from the audience. So,
Yeah, I mean, you want me to take
Jason,
that, Sam? Yeah, sure. So yeah, I'll be quick. So I guess from my side of things, we're seeing a lot with the automation front, right? So finding ways to make processes more easy and repeatable. So these could be things like deploying Azure infrastructure. Say you're building virtual networks in Azure, VPN gateways, some underlying server infrastructure. Templatizing that using infrastructure as code, right? Using tools such as Terraform. Azure has a bunch of native tools as well for this that we can use, and taking that, coding it, and then making a repeatable process out of it. So you don't have to, recreate the wheel each and every time, right? We follow the CAF, the Cloud Adoption Framework. So once that best practice has been established, again, templatizing that. So there's no mistakes in redeploying it as well. Zero trust networking was something that was mentioned, right? Zero trust. That is becoming more and more prevalent in the networking space. So by default, devices can't go anywhere. You have to explicitly allow policy for what can go and where it can go. So that's another big front we see that's expanding. Software-defined networking, again, that's kind of drives that zero trust networking. It also drives communication between sites and between clouds. So overlays to make networking self-healing. So if a VPN tunnel goes down, if a network link goes down, if there's latency on a specific leg of your network, being able to adjust and automatically heal that based on predefined policies and controls. And then automation as well, even in the calling space, right? So these migrations or these enablements, right? Enabling teams calling across the organization, creating scripts for this and being able to automate this and make it a seamless process, a non-intrusive process for the organizations that we onboard. So a lot around the automation front is really where we see a lot of this going.
And from my
thank
side,
you, Jason.
okay, sorry, Sam.
No, you can go. Yeah, that's
All
what
right.
I was saying.
No, I'm saying on the productivity side, it's all about artificial intelligence and enhancing the meeting experience. So I think artificial intelligence is going to be important. It's going to be an important way of how we communicate and collaborate in the future. AI is going to work to improve productivity, efficiency, and just overall how business flows. We can use AI tools before, during, and even after a team's collaboration session. As an example, before a meeting, AI could identify which documents are needed. It can access the latest versions of each document. It can make it available to all the team members before the meeting. During a meeting, the AI tools could automatically identify and present additional relevant information throughout the meeting. It could present web links, videos, documents, all that would be useful in a meeting just based on words that are said during a meeting or a topic that's discussed. AI tools can also take meeting notes. It can create action items. It can get approvals. It can assign tasks. After a meeting, AI tools can be used to follow up on assigned tasks and deadlines. It can summarize or transcribe the meeting content into text. It can provide an easy way for people to access important information based on the topic or if their name was mentioned, and so much more. So AI teams, meeting experiences, all of this is the future. And I think we have a lot of it in place now, but I foresee it. We're just building. It's just the tip of the iceberg for a lot of these features that we should see down the road.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm actually going to interrupt Ash and ask some of the questions from the audience. One of them is for him. So Ash, how does ATP compare to the emulation and threat prevention of a solution like Dome9 or Sandblast?
There are some areas where that they can they overlap, right? But from a ATP perspective, ATP is a bunch of threat solutions, continuous vulnerability assessment, remediation tool, automation, intelligence. Gene and Jason talked about AI and automation piece, right? So what makes ATP different really is that the AI, the automation piece that it's going to leverage from auto remediation, right? And that's where the difference would be.
Thank you. And we have one other question. Do you see emerging blockchain technologies affecting data and platform security?
Yeah, yes. So those are one of the emerging technologies where things like blockchain is codeless deployment, containerization, all this new emerging technologies. It's going to disrupt the security world, but the security tools need to be modernized and need to be updated. And this is something that where there's a lot of challenge. That's why you're seeing consolidation in the market. Things like Microsoft getting in front of it to quickly adopt to secure this component. Yes, we do see some disruption in that area.
And the last one, quickly for Jason, actually, are people moving off traditional backup applications like Net Backup or Azure Backup Server? Also, can Azure Backup Server be installed with a VM or a Hyper-V platform?
So moving off Azure Backup, I mean, so it really depends. There's different use cases, right? I mean, there's a lot of backup products out there. It really depends on what you're trying to achieve with your backups. Azure Backup does support a local backup instance. It's called Microsoft Azure Backup Server. It's pretty recent. It used to be System Center Data Protection Manager, I believe, but it runs as a local VM, and it can back up your workloads on premise as well as copy those up to the cloud, right, using the Azure Recovery Services vaults. But I mean, it really depends on the customer's needs. So we don't see people moving off one or going towards another one. We have a mix. We have people that run Veeam and Azure Backup. It's all based on use case, but absolutely Azure Backup can support local instances.
Perfect. Well, that concludes this this panel. I want to say thank you to Jason, Ash, Gene, and also the other Jason. And if you have any additional questions, you can always reach out to me, and I'll make sure to pass it on to the corresponding engineer. So thank you, guys. We're going to move straight into our next panel, the executive panel, Surviving Security Breaches. I do believe we have our 4 panelists on. So Katie, do you want to take over? I don't think we can hear you.
You probably have a button.
Up at the top, it's next to the little signal button. It looks like a microphone.
Looks like she is not muted based on the icon. Do you have a button? Actually, you don't have a headset, so you wouldn't have a button.
You also have to give a permission to the big marker, so I'm not sure if that's part of if you have a pop-up blocker right now.
It's probably a browser settings. Check the permissions of the browser to enable the microphone.
Or punch out and punch back in, and when it asks, do you want to let Chrome use your microphone, say yes. Chrome is an assumption.
That's okay. We have, this is what it's like to be virtual nowadays. Everyone always has some type of technical difficulty, and that's okay. Let's see.
This is why I hate technology.
You chose the wrong industry. I'm kidding.
Oh no, I spend my life hating computers. I'm in the perfect industry.
That's why you're in security,
well,
protecting people from computers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, while we wait so we don't, go over time, why don't the three of you can introduce yourselves, and then when Katie jumps on, she can also introduce herself. So, Mike, do you want to go first?
I will go first. So, hello, Mike Hamilton. I'm the founder of CI Security, and I also function as the information security officer. My background is going backwards in time, policy advisor for Governor Inslee in Washington State. I was the CISO for the city of Seattle for about 7.5 years. Was the vice chair of a Homeland Security Government Coordinating Council, and I was the managing consultant for VeriSign's Global Security Consulting. And going way back in time, I did satellite oceanography for NASA.
Now you got our attention.
Wow. So,
and that last part.
Guy, do you want to go next?
Sure. So hi, everyone. My name is Guy Eisdorfer. One of the founders of Cogni and currently the CEO. My background is in the security and artificial intelligence world, anywhere from in the healthcare and a little bit about the antivirus world, and then in the ERP world and everything related to in the enterprise. And the last, I would say 10 years, specializing specifically in artificial intelligence for security. And between Tel Aviv, New York, and don't hold it against me, Boca Raton, Florida, and back to Georgia.
Very nice. And Chris?
Awesome. Yeah, great to be here today. My name's Chris McCloskey, and currently serve as an offering analyst for OneTrust. So I come from a background of implementation specifically for mobility initiatives and security products from a prior life at VMware, working with the federal government and securing mobile endpoints and enabling employees to have access to corporate resources, but doing it in a secure manner in kind of today's changing landscape. And have spent the last few years at OneTrust, where I've began focusing on our privacy-focused solutions, helping organizations achieve GDPR and CCPA compliance, but have recently stepped into an offering analyst role where I help to oversee both kind of pre and post-sales, how we go to market for our OneTrust Vendorpedia solution, really focused on third-party risk and helping organizations really try achieve efficiencies in assessing third-party risk.
Perfect, thank you. And Katie, can we hear you now?
No.
I don't think so. Oh, damn. Yeah, I still can't hear you.
Let's do it in ASL.
Okay. So yeah, this panel is obviously surviving security breaches. So, obviously we're not every company is 100%, protected from some security breaches, from risks, from hacks. So this panel is really going to be looking into these three experts and their recommendations on how to obviously utilize new technologies, new techniques in order to secure your business and make sure that you're looking out for what you need to. So the first question, this is for Guy, but Mike and Chris, you can obviously chime in. Why should businesses consider managed detection response tools?
Sure, very good question. I'll give like a quick overview, and my friends here can jump in any time to add more inputs. So really, when you're talking about managed security today, and especially today, look how we communicate, right? Instead of last year, we met face to face. We're communicating over the web right now, Zoom, Teams, and any other tool that they help us to communicate. And at the same time, we actually moving information too. And when you're a large company or a small company, it doesn't really matter, because without using cloud and without using information, which is basically the bloodline of your company, and moving it from one person to another and share and collaborate, we can't do business today. And to start managing information is a very, very difficult task, because you don't really understand the information today. You're busy in discovery and understand what's going on, and you lack in intelligence. And managed services give you extra layer of intelligence that you, as a person that works for a specific company, probably don't have today. And you don't have the ability to reach those specific tools without getting the managed services. So with the help of managed services, and think about it, that really intelligence going to be and I'm sorry, I'm coming from an AI background, so I'm going to talk about intelligence here and AI, because the way I see it, the more we grow and the more we share, the more we collaborate, the more difficult for us is to manage our security. And without using a platform that can actually give us some kind of a baseline that will try to save us hundreds of man hours and sort the alerts for us and focus us on what we really need, it's nearly an impossible mission. And I see the future now is really going towards enterprise intelligence and embedding and embracing AI tools to save you the time, to save you the man hours there and the cost, and you have a better understanding of what you need to deal with. The deal is basically you want to simplify your life and manage, and that managed security helps you to do so. And you don't have to deal with everything else. You just need to focus on what you need, and you can do your job in a much more simple way. And this is what we see today out in the field with our partners and clients, if it makes sense.
I'll add a little bit to that.
Sure.
Just, from a risk management perspective, everyone has applied all of the preventive controls that they can, right? Regardless, venture capital firms are continuing to invest in the next new piece of magic that will automate everything for you. But here's the deal. Those preventive controls, they only go so far. A determined actor gets around preventive controls because there will never be a firewall for stupid. That's just, people are going to blow it. And so what you need to manage is the impact of what is really a foreseeable event here. And the way to manage that impact, to make sure that the help desk cleans up a workstation and not the FBI call to tell you your records are for sale online, is to monitor your network, make sure that you detect well, and that you have very effective response. Simultaneously, most mid-market organizations have absolutely no access to the kinds of professional resources to do this work. And so managed services as a focal point for this creates a value proposition that is much, much better than going out and hiring people who cost a lot of money, are in short supply, and I can tell you with a good deal of authority, are a little bit flaky because they'll change jobs every 6 months because they know they can double their salary. So that's where managed services fits in.
Okay, thank you. Chris, do you have anything to add? Should we move on?
Yeah, I think from my point of view and kind of my lens, I think a huge piece of security is third-party risk, and I know organizations that I speak to have a significant challenge in managing third-party risk, and quite frankly, just the sheer spread of data that extends beyond your firewall when it comes to transfers to third parties. And really getting cooperation from third parties, especially during onboarding, when you're, standing up new applications, trying to keep up with demands from the business is a huge, liability in itself, which, frankly, just requires a lot of, manpower, womanpower to, follow up and actually get engagement and participation from your third party vendors, to really, kind of first look at some of those preventative controls when it comes to just the sheer kind of spread of data across those kind of data transfers. So That's where I see, at least from, my perspective, and kind of some of the solutions that we offer, where that's a huge piece is, having just the additional kind of resources upfront to help with some of the data sprawl as it relates to just the sheer volume of cloud providers that businesses are continuously becoming more and more reliant upon.
And Katie, are you back? Can we hear you?
Testing. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, mic check. All right.
Perfect.
Great. I like Jason said on the last
so
panel, it would be a conference without a couple of technical difficulties. So thanks for your patience.
No, I think the moderators are having a rough day today. It's okay. So we're actually going to move on to Mike's question. So if you want to take that on.
Yeah. So and thank you all, Katie Anderson here from Microsoft. Moving on to the next question, Mike. We see on an almost daily basis new security breaches coming in. Can you talk about a recent security breach and what businesses can do differently?
Yeah, let's talk about a couple of whoppers that have come up just in the last couple of weeks. And so I think everybody knows about Universal Health Services, and all of their facilities got crushed. And so, taking doctors back to pen and paper is dangerous. And yet that's kind of where they are. They apparently brought their data center back on. So this is ransomware that permeated a giant organization. It's something like 250 facilities. So that's a big deal. Also, a couple of weeks ago, Tyler Technologies, the #1 service provider for local governments in the United States. So, cities, counties, they do a lot of public safety and law enforcement products, and they have active logins into government systems in all of these local governments. And they got compromised, and they're calling it, hey, we got ransomware. No, customer records were stolen. I don't care if customer records were stolen or not. I care if they lifted the passwords and they're all logging into counties now to crush them with ransomware before an election. That's a big deal. There is an automated phishing worm out there right now that compromises an account, uses a little bit of AI or some kind of intelligence to look at your last messages to people that you were communicating with, and then sends them messages as you with phishing links. And so it's got this exponential rate of increase. So, what are the take-home messages here? Well, number one, schools, hospitals, and local governments are getting whacked real hard right now. There's a lot of scale and automation being used for these. And really what it's boiling down to is it's all about credentials, and that's where a whole lot of focus needs to be right now. So what could the businesses do differently? Man, you got to focus on user passwords and the fact that they'll give it up to anybody that asks for it. Great.
Chris, one of the things that focuses on is compliance and privacy, which are important aspects of keeping a business secure. How can companies think about streamlining their compliance?
Yeah, great question. I think to start, I do like to, remind folks, we do also focus on aspects of security as well, because, at the end of the day, privacy, security, compliance, they're all very tightly related to one another. And chances are, if you're lacking in one area, you're also lacking in, probably some form or fashion of the other two as well. But when it comes to kind of just the overall strategy of looking at, privacy, security, compliance, how do we actually introduce efficiencies and really kind of streamline the process? I think there's really kind of two things that are, really kind of critical in doing so. And I think the first is, top-down commitment, from leadership to actually make a commitment as an organization to look at ways to actually embed privacy and security and compliance into the organization and throughout, so that you can really design your processes and also, kind of the second key piece alongside the right tooling to allow for those efficiencies. So I think, when you look at, tooling to actually allow for those efficiencies, I think it's critical that you have a way to really engage in what we often kind of, coin the term at OneTrust is a first line friendly tool that allows your business users and the individual business units to really kind of also do their part in the broader kind of process of achieving some of those efficiencies as it comes to the different, privacy, security controls and the different record keeping that organizations need to have in place to really kind of achieve that level of compliance. So that's really kind of the approach that, and really kind of the angle that we've looked at, kind of the problem, of just a changing regulatory environment, constant change with privacy regulations, and kind of just the consistent, and constant, approach that organizations need to have to managing security. It's never a one-time exercise of, putting controls in place. As soon as you do, there's going to be changes to how your infrastructure is configured, the type of data that's flowing in and out of your applications. So that's kind of the approaches that we've taken, is really a first line friendly approach to allowing your business users throughout kind of their processes of adding or onboarding new vendors or deploying new IT assets or applications to take that information, allow for automation on the back end to automatically surface and flag, where there are high risk applications, high risk vendor relationships, to then allow you to automate downstream workflows of actually seeing through various control implementations, offloading kind of aspects of third-party risk for, vendor engagements, but also being able to really kind of operate within the broader ecosystem so you can link in with different tools that are going to be, carrying out that active kind of network monitoring, show you, where there are potential vulnerabilities, and really kind of leverage the technical, broader kind of solutions and kind of have that all-in-one view of, kind of the end-to-end process and 50-foot overview of, where your data is and how it's protected.
Agreed. And I think that that's a theme we're going to see pretty consistently today, with the idea of automation across security, making it easier for organizations to keep compliant and secure. So this next question I have is really for all of you, but maybe we can start with Guy. What advice would you have for IT operations manager? What's the best piece of advice that you could provide for someone looking over the IT infrastructure?
Sure. I think that usually, an operation manager and IT infrastructure people, when they hear about the need for compliance and security, they get pretty much a rush over their face, right? It's a scary thing. It's complicated. It takes a lot of man hours. My advice will be, first of all, go to the basic. Understand where your risks are before you try to implement something. Once you understand where the risks are, you actually have the knowledge on what you need to implement. So a lot of people, and I see it, a lot of our clients, they're running quickly because they have to put a checkbox and say, okay, I need to be compliant because this or that. Let's implement this tool. Let's implement that tool. And eventually what happened, you spend a lot of money, and now you're sitting down and justifying the cost that you just spent, but you don't really use that tool, right? So to maximize on your investment, do the groundwork first, right? Understand where your risks are. And there are a lot of tools today in the field that you don't have to be afraid of them because they do automation. They're not there to replace their job, right? A lot of people think that because of those automation tools, we're going to lose our job. It can never replace a human being 100%, right? They still need us, thank God. So doomsday is not here yet. And at the same time, try to get a grasp of what's going on in your organization, understand where your risks are, aim yourself towards a better infrastructure, right? And build the architecture around that.
Agreed. And Chris, I see you nodding along with that. Is there anything else that you would add to that from an advice perspective for an IT manager?
Yeah, I first was appreciating the comment from Guy that when you bring up privacy and compliance, a lot of the managers and directors, their face turns red. I think that's it's certainly the truth in a lot of cases. And I think I would just add, it doesn't necessarily always have to be a significant challenge. I see a lot of organizations taking the approach of looking at kind of the most stringent requirements when it comes to maybe a privacy regulation or a compliance initiative, and really just kind of taking that approach across the organization. So, you may in some areas end up, adhering to more stringent compliance requirements than you're ultimately required from a legal perspective. But by taking that unified approach across the organization, that really kind of sets you up for long-term success. So at any time a new regulation comes about, a new more stringent requirement, is released in this certain geographical area, you're really kind of future-proofing your organization. So it's not a huge, overwhelming exercise, each time that happens, which we know is going to continue to happen in the future.
Agreed. I think that the holistic approach is really important, especially as the landscape continues to change. Mike, next question for you. Or if you'd like to answer that question, I did save one for you that I thought would be.
All right. Well, I do have just a few bullet points that I would like to throw out there for advice for IT directors. So number one, I mean, clearly credentials are under attack. It's easy to walk into your network when some doofus gives up a password. Okay. So multi-factor authentication everywhere, because ransomware is what keeps happening. Comprehensive backup and restoration plan. Take a domain controller offline so that you have an offline domain controller to restore yourself. That is super important. Number two, and this is equally important, change your policy of de minimis use. Tell your people all personal use on a personal device. And so they're not Facebooking on a company asset anymore. You just drove a whole bunch of the problem off a cliff, okay? Those two simple, inexpensive things move the needle a lot. Do those two things. And then number three, this whole focus on monitoring, detection, and effective response. Consider throwing the whole problem over the fence to a combination of managed and professional services. You get liability and compliance protection. You get to tick off all the boxes. And, a 24/7 SOC for the cost of a single employee is a good deal. So start thinking about the economics of security here. Do the cheapest things you can that move the needle the most.
Agreed. And Mike, what are some of the things that you see coming down the path for the next year to 2 years, especially from a CISO CIO perspective? What are some big trends that you see coming?
So more automation by threat actors, for sure. I mean, just the scale of what we're seeing, even the unemployment insurance fraud that went on, that smacked of automation. Okay, that was not a bunch of dudes doing onesie twosie. That was at scale. So there's going to be more automation, and we're seeing this now with this automated, it's a phishing worm. There is a great likelihood of attacks like this getting out of control, like NotPetya did, like WannaCry did. This can happen again. And the concern there is it could wipe out insurers. So heads up on that. And lastly, I would say watch out for executive penalties for security events, because this has been suggested and it's likely to happen. And if you are, the person that's trying to create a value proposition for budget, talking about scary Russian cyber SQL injection will only get you so far. Start talking about, executive gross negligence, and you're going to have a much better conversation.
Agreed. Guy, do you have anything to add to that? Sorry, go ahead, Sam.
We just do have two questions, so just letting you guys know. But Guy, you can go.
Sure, no problem. So I 100% agree with Mike. I think his observation is on the point. What we're going to see really in the upcoming future is a lot of automation. And I think that us as human, we won't be able to deal with this amount of attacks that attacking us. And we have to apply in place some kind of automation that will actually knows how to fight back, right? Because the amount of alerts we're dealing on a daily basis, just a human being cannot deal with those alerts or understand them. Even if we don't apply proper automation in place, we won't be able to fight back.
Agreed.
And I think that leads into the question asked, are breaches and attacks originating more predominantly now from automated sources?
I don't know if it's predominantly, but it's definitely an increasing trend. And the ones that have been noticed recently, these are new and novel. My suspicion is that these are going to get to be very commonplace.
And then this next one I think is more for Chris, but Guy and Mike and Katie, you can also answer. What are the options for looking at compliance for serverless functions commonly being used in modern structures?
I got to say, not a clue. Go ahead, Guy.
I'm going to leave it in Chris's hands.
Yeah, that's I would say that's a tough one. I think at least from a OneTrust perspective, we've built tools to really again and kind of engage from the first line. We have tools to really kind of help automate and discover where your data resides. Not sure specifically what the infrastructure or kind of the architecture would look like, for more of kind of the serverless component there. But, there are certainly ways to kind of leverage, automation and tooling to help discover kind of where your data resides and, kind of going forward and, really kind of some initiatives that we see, becoming more prevalent in the industry is, also the automation and the AI to actually couple the compliance requirements on top of that. So really kind of pulling from, a single location where we've kind of aggregated and looked at just different compliance requirements across different geographical locations. So certainly our, automation and tooling in place to kind of help with that, from that standpoint.
Thank you. So it's 1 o'clock. So I really appreciate all of you joining us, Mike, Guy, Chris, Katie. It's been a pleasure. Again, same thing as last time. If any questions do come up, I can get you in touch with the corresponding representatives. And I do believe Chris is going to stay with us for another 20 minutes or so. As a sponsor, OneTrust Vendorpedia does have 20 minutes to kind of go through what they would like to talk to you about and how it kind of is relevant to what we're talking about today. So Chris, I'll stop sharing my screen and you could share yours whenever you're ready.
All right, I gotta go, folks. Bye.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks, Guy. Thanks,
See you, Katie.
Do you know how to share the screen? It doesn't look like we can hear you, Chris. I don't know what happened because you were good before.
Okay, apologies. I think I may have been on mute. I think I got it covered. Can you see my screen coming through okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, perfect. So with the session today and just as a continuation of the conversation and the number of points that I made throughout the discussion, I wanted to specifically highlight what we've really been investing heavily in at OneTrust, which is our OneTrust Vendorpedia third-party risk exchange. So wanted to really kind of primarily showcase that. Before I do jump in, I wanted to just first kind of provide a little bit of a level set and just kind of an introduction to OneTrust as an organization and the platform that we do offer. So we do offer a number of tools across privacy, security, compliance, and also how that extends into even ethics and overall data governance. So it's an all-in-one web-based application, primarily a cloud, but with a tightly set of integrated applications, allowing organizations to introduce some of those operational efficiencies as it pertains to the different requirements across kind of the different considerations there. So what I wanted to do, with that kind of high-level intro into OneTrust is also specifically focus on how we're helping organizations to achieve, and really kind of just gain a better grasp on their overall third-party risk posture and helping to streamline the process of, assessing and understanding risk as it relates to third parties and when your business may be adding on new applications. So I mentioned the fact of or the concept of having a first line friendly approach to really engaging the business. So really, when it comes to, our customers and how the process can start within organizations that use our platform is first providing a way to extend and gather information from the business So what I'm kind of just showing here on the screen is what we call our self-service portal. So essentially, this could be a portal that's opened up to the business. So if they wanted to onboard a new third party, or maybe if they're in IT and they actually wanted to deploy a new piece of hardware or software within the organization, they can actually go into this self-service portal to provide some baseline information as it relates to maybe, in this case, a new third party that they're looking to onboard. So through this portal, what they're able to do is really go through kind of a dynamic set of questions and really just information that you can collect to help understand maybe the extent to which this third party needs to be assessed, or maybe the controls that need to be in place from a preventative control standpoint to help protect against any sort of vulnerabilities or potential breaches. So by going through really kind of a set of questions, they can go through a dynamic questionnaire. And as part of that onboarding questionnaire, they can answer different questions about the scope of information. So maybe if there's personal information involved, you can then dynamically add on additional questions to understand maybe is any sort of health information in scope, or is there any sort of sensitive data as it relates to minors, which can have a lot of compliance and privacy considerations as well. So by going through this series of questions, this is something that we make available out of the box, but our customers can always go in and customize. They can then, off of the back end, really kind of use the automation of the platform to consolidate, bring all of that vendor and kind of third-party information into a single inventory where you're able to track the different aspects of that engagement. What is kind of the scope of how this third party is going to be used, who are the contacts at that organization, what are the different products and services that are going to be leveraged, but also based on automated risk logic that's really kind of working behind the scenes, we can automatically flag high risk engagements, understanding where those inherent risks reside with the third party, and also automatically populate and recommend the specific controls that perhaps may need to be in place to properly protect that particular maybe asset, application, or just the overall third party engagement. So really that's kind of the first way of just, again, allowing that process to be streamlined with your first line, with your business unit. So, it's not a tedious process to even get the right teams involved. They can be engaged upfront, understanding kind of where those risks reside and what are some of those controls that need to be in place. So that's really a critical piece to the overall process and really kind of introducing efficiencies. But next, wanted to actually highlight where we've really taken a unique approach here at OneTrust to helping organizations really offload and realize efficiencies when it comes to the third party due diligence overall. So we've built what we again coin as the OneTrust Vendorpedia Third Party Risk Exchange. So what this is essentially a database of vendors. So today we have about 70,000 vendors in our exchange, where we've really kind of aggregated information as it pertains to privacy, security, and broader compliance to really just use that as a resource during security teams, third-party risk teams processes in as they're assessing third-party vendors. So that really kind of couples information that we proactively research and aggregate on various third parties, but also relies on actual active vendor participation where they've made available different audit reports. Maybe they had an on-site audit and did some controls validation testing. Maybe they already and just recently completed a security assessment. So rather than going through the full process net new from within your organization, you can really kind of leverage the broader network and leverage the information that's already been collected, where many of the organizations are constantly assessing the same vendors. So really kind of taking advantage of that from a resource and time constraint perspective. So what that looks like specifically within the platform, say once we've had that request initiated from the business, they want to onboard a new third party, they can our customers can directly access our exchange from within the platform. So you can actually go in, search from our database of today 68,000 vendors, constantly growing, constantly adding in additional vendors. So say, for example, if we wanted to onboard Google, evaluate and look at any sort of company details, we can actually drill into the vendor's profile, where we can access first and foremost feeds from our data guidance research database. So this is where we track past breach and enforcement activity, any sort of negative news maybe that has come up with the vendor, so we can really kind of access that historical information. We can get information on just who the vendor is, what space do they operate, or what industry do they operate in, but also look at the specific products and services that they offer. So when we look at, we look at evaluating G Suite versus, Google Cloud for Google, for example, we can see those different products and services, and also see, what are the different, certifications that they have, so we can really kind of use that to, in some cases, maybe substitute actually going through a full assessment with the vendor. So we can see maybe when they obtained a certain ISO certification. In cases where vendors have already made those available, we can just directly download that. So we can evaluate maybe any sort of findings, or when that certification was obtained, what was the scope of that certification, which data centers were actually assessed. So we can then take that into consideration, and again use this as potential ways to streamline the overall process, kind of expand the level of due diligence that we're able to obtain by not starting from scratch each and every time. So huge piece that we see value in our customers finding value in, and just having that information readily available. And then also when it comes to actual assessments, this is where our customers can again really kind of realize some efficiencies in having and using the exchange, but also leveraging our team to assess any sort of new vendors where we don't already have assessments in the exchange. So if you wanted to carry out, say, a full kind of questionnaire risk assessment, understand the controls that the vendor has in place, how is your information going to be protected, where are any sort of kind of data transfers occurring as it might relate to any sort of compliance requirements, you can actually go in and just specifically request those assessments from the exchange. And if they're already there, we would essentially just ask the vendor to release that information. Or if it's a net new vendor and an assessment that maybe we haven't already had completed and available within the exchange, that would actually go to our team to collect on your behalf. So your team's not having to actually carry that out. So really just the process, you can go in, select, the specific vendor that you want to assess. If you wanted to make that unique to a specific product and service, we have ways of facilitating even on-site validation of the specific controls that you're assessing, or, if we wanted, remote or on-site resources to do so, or you can just select, maybe a self-attested assessment from the vendor. And ultimately, once that is, either authorized from the vendor or our team goes and collects that on your behalf, you would have that assessment available for your review directly within the OneTrust platform. So you would be able to drill into the results of the assessment, where you can see we have, associated a specific risk level based on the responses from the vendor. So we can actually go in this case, this is an assessment, one of our out-of-the-box assessments, which is based on ISO 27001 standards. So we can go review each of the results and responses from the vendor, understand, what controls perhaps they've attested to having in place, review any sort of supporting evidence that they've gathered, but also leverage the automation that we have working behind the scenes to automatically flag risks as it relates to this particular vendor and the subsequent controls that they have in place as it relates to just the different assessment standards. So from here, you can drill into any sort of specific risks. You can see which particular question or control gap, maybe flag that. So if you needed to follow up with the vendor, you can really kind of engage in really just a much more streamlined approach of engaging with that back and forth. And then as a result, you can then kind of all in one see the single risks associated with that engagement. So if you needed to carry out any sort of risk remediation, you can then allow your teams to focus on that aspect as opposed to just, the assessment and understanding of the controls in place from the vendor. So that's kind of just the process and kind of how, our customers leverage the exchange to first kind of gather some of that initial information, baseline due diligence details around what types of certifications are in place, pull that down from the exchange to kind of streamline that, but also carry out assessments to understand, again, where those risks and control gaps exist. So following any of those assessments through the platform, we're then able to then report on that, maintain records for compliance to be able to demonstrate how your team has properly assessed those controls. So if you were to get audited, or you need to go back and see, where do I have vendors where multi-factor authentication isn't in place, you have all of that information at your grasp, and you're able to report on that. So just a couple ways that that's achieved through the platform is different dashboards where we can drill into, where do my third-party risks, or even, just security risks in general, exist within different business units. I can get insights into, the criticality of my vendors and see, where are my most critical vendors? Where do those most risky engagements take place? I can also compare different responses from different vendors. So if I wanted to, following kind of any assessments, drill into, again, maybe where certain vendors don't have a certain control in place, I can sort and filter on those criteria, filter it down appropriately, and then of course be able to make any sort of recommendations from the business and output any sort of results into a PDF. So as third-party risk and security teams carry out any sort of assessments, I can output results of the assessment, any sort of control gaps that exist. Maybe I need to provide that back to the business alongside any sort of recommendations for whether or not we're going to proceed with onboarding that third party. Ultimately, and kind of next, having all of that information then consolidated within a single location allows you just to, at a glance, be able to see where those risks are, and if you needed to actually go in and then carry out any sort of remediation engagement with the vendor, recommending certain controls, we can then follow a structured workflow to make those recommendations, capture that needed evidence to understand and ensure that the adequate controls are in place, and really just maintain that historical audit trail of how these risks have been reduced over time, so that information is readily available. Again, in case we needed to demonstrate anything to an auditor, we can see, when changes were made, when was the last time we actually visited this, critical risk, and have those things alerted to you as well. But then just lastly, a critical piece to the, kind of the overall view into third parties and really kind of keeping your risk posture as it relates to your third parties up to date, but also understanding the compliance requirements. A critical piece is how our data guidance research platform fits into to your overall third party risk program. So we can help alert you of any sort of breach and enforcement activity. So when you're looking at ongoing monitoring of your vendors, can be alerted of those changes, or if there's any sort of updates from a compliance standpoint, that directly feeds into our platform as well. So we have our regulatory team kind of monitoring those, detecting any sort of changes or breaches with vendors, and notifying you of that directly within the platform. But also outside of some of just those ongoing updates, understanding when breaches may have happened, maybe a certain certification expires. Many of our customers also look at an approach to actually continue reassessing vendors and third parties over time, so not making that a one-time exercise. So we do have a number of automation and workflows in place. Or if you wanted to leverage the exchange, you can opt into receiving a reassessment year over year. So when you look at having and accessing a single vendor record within your instance of OneTrust, you can see your historical assessments, how you've assessed them year over year, maybe whether any of those same risks exist. So keeping that up-to-date information on which risks are still active. And when you're also looking at the overall risk posture of your vendor, how do those individual risks ultimately aggregate to form maybe a low-risk vendor or a high-risk vendor? When you're tracking this holistically, how risky is this? We can then track over time based on any sort of mitigation that's taken place, based on any sort of increases in the scope of personal information. We can then show how that risk level and aggregate risk has translated or been reduced over time. So that really kind of just concludes what I had prepared to demonstrate as it relates to the OneTrust Vendorpedia third-party risk exchange and kind of how we're seeing that really become kind of the future in how organizations are tackling third-party risk and kind of just leveraging that broader community, kind of the third-party risk teams getting in the foxhole together and leveraging information and due diligence that other teams across the world have also carried out before.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Chris. That was really in depth. And I'll also be following up with everyone. So I'll also include OneTrust information. So if you have any additional questions or want to learn more about how to streamline your compliance, I can get you in touch with Chris and his team. I do believe we're right on time, so that's perfect. Jim from Imperva is going to be sharing his presentation. Imperva is another one of our sponsors for this event. So you can take it away, Jim. Jim, can you hear us? Let's see. He was just here a second ago. I actually have Leslie Clater. I have made her a presenter. She's also from Imperva, so she can kind of just start the discussion if she is available. Leslie, can you hear us? Mm-hmm. Hi, Jim. Are you back? I see you on the presenter screen.
The lockup is, what was the last frame?
Yeah, so you can start sharing your screen if you want. We didn't see any of it, so you're good.
All right. Well, I was more worried about my face if it was like in the middle of a sneeze or something like that.
You're good.
All right. Let me know when you can see that.
Here we go. You're good.
All right. Hi, everybody. This is Jim with Imperva, and just want to take a few minutes today to tell you a little bit about us, what we do, and how we can help you with some problems that you might be having. So at Imperva, our big focus is helping you protect your data, because data is what you have. It's what makes you different from other folks. It's we used to say that, you know, data was like gold because you could refine so much stuff from it. And we'll sometimes say today, data is like plutonium because you can use it for some really useful things. You can get energy out of it, but it is toxic and dangerous if it's misused or if it gets into the wrong hands. So our goal here at Imperva is to help you protect your data and protect all the paths to it. So you think about the data that you have in your company and where you store that. Obviously, I've got my diagram up here that shows a nice linear progression. And of course, in the real world, it's not like that. You have data all over the place. You have data on site, you have data in the cloud, you might have data in various repositories that you access through databases or through APIs, etc. But we can help you manage it wherever it is, and we can help you protect it wherever it is. You've got the bad guys on the outside that are trying to get in through various ways, through the network, through your web application, through any APIs that you have exposed. And you've got, of course, the insider threat. You've got either those bad guys are able to get inside your organization, get access to internal user accounts or internal systems through some other method, or you may have somebody working for you that is grabbing that information using the rights that they're entitled to have. They do have the right to access that information. They're just using it in the wrong way. And so even though you've gone through all the right procedures to assign those rights and to restrict those rights, if you have somebody that already has those rights, but they're using it the wrong way, you still have that insider threat problem. And we can do that by protecting the data along each step of the way and then giving you the insights into it. So if you've heard of Imperva before, if you've worked in the networking or the security space on the application side, you've probably heard of Imperva and as one of the first WAFs that was available on our cloud WAF for the web application firewall. If you've been working with database and database protection, you might know us from the database auditing side, where we're able to help you track what's going on inside the database, inside your data stores, how that information is being touched, audited, and alert on it from a security standpoint. But the real power comes when you can put all that together, and we can not only track the traffic coming in to the website, but also being able to track that back to where it's hitting the data. I was just having a conversation this morning with a customer. He says, I've got all of our logs from outside the organization. I've got all of our logs from inside of the organization. And it goes through all of these hops in the middle. I just wish there was some way that I could connect those two. And we can give you that because we've got the protection on the outside. We've got the application services that can run on the application server that can connect that data coming in from the outside to even back to the data query on the inside. So if you see somebody through your web application had queried 1 million records, we can tell you who queried it, where they came from, what user they were logged in with, and what command they executed that resulted in that query in the database. And of course, that's a great end-to-end story, and we can do that for you, but we can also help protect you each step of the way. On the Cloud WAF on the edge, we can help with the denial of service, protecting that. We have built into the Imperva platform, we have a content delivery network so that as we're doing all this for you, we can help optimize that. The web application firewall, that everybody knows us for, the runtime application self-protection, that ability to run on the application server regardless of whether it's traffic coming in from the network or east-west. Advanced bot protection. If you've been watching Imperva in the news, you saw that we, a year or so ago, acquired Distill Networks, and we have incorporated their bot protection services in there so that you can identify those automated processes that are coming in and stop them or redirect them or track what they're doing. And then, of course, putting it all together with the attack analytics, because as everybody knows, if you put something on the internet, it's going to get hit. And so giving you alerts and telling you, hey, somebody on the internet attacked you. Hey, somebody on the internet attacked you. Hey, somebody on the internet tried to send some compromised attack doesn't do anything for you, because you just get bombarded all the time, because telling you that you're being attacked on the internet doesn't give you any new information. Bringing those analytics together to be able to tell you who's attacking you, why they're attacking you, and what information they're going for is what the attack analytics does, and it gives you that, and then of course gives you the recommendations on top of that to say, hey, it looks like somebody's going after this, you should make this configuration change to protect it. Hey, it looks like we're seeing a bunch of account takeover attempts on your login page, you should consider onboarding it to the account takeover protection. For us, the account takeover is part of the advanced bot protection, but being able to identify that bad behavior coming in. And then of course, on the database side, being able to protect the data that you have there, whether it's being accessed through the application or whether it's being accessed internally by your DBAs or by some kind of a compromised account. Being able to tell you who touched what is great for compliance and security. So if you have a compliance regulation, whether it's Sarbanes-Oxley, the CCPA, NYDFS, all of those, we can help you meet those requirements.
think we lost Jim. I know he said he was having some technical difficulties before he jumped on. Let's see, Leslie, if you're able to talk, you can definitely comment on anything else for Imperva. If you can't talk right now, that's totally fine. We can take a 10-minute break because I wasn't really involved in the presentation or the agenda. So we can take a 10-minute break, and then when we get back, we can discuss security awareness training. We do have all of our speakers on already.
Hey, Bill, can you hear me?
Hey everyone, Kevin Switzer here as well. Bill, I can hear you just fine.
Great. Hi guys, we can hear you. We can get started in a few minutes. Okay. And I do believe Kevin is on, so we should have everyone. I did want to just note to all the panelists so that you're aware, we did have a poll go out earlier about cybersecurity awareness training and who requires it, when they require it. So we did get some answers. Majority of them do test cybersecurity awareness training yearly, but we do have a few that only do it quarterly and monthly, so that's something to consider. And we do have one company who does not do it at all, so that's something to consider for this next panel and seeing what they need to change, if anything. So Jaime, I will give you the ball.
Cool. Can you guys hear me? Sam, can you hear me?
Yes, sound good.
Great. So we got everyone on. Thank you, Sam. Thank you all for joining. All right, so let's jump right in. So human error accounts for 95% of security incidents. Users are not always aware of all the threats and the importance of being alert and secure. In this panel, we'll discuss the importance of training your users. We'll discuss how to create organizational policies to decrease risk. And now that more and more people are working from home, IT and security teams have a greater need to know what users are up to. We'll discuss different tools which can be put in place to keep users and your business secure. And users are your last line of defense. Therefore, it's imperative to make sure that they're properly trained to identify all sorts of threats. Thank you to everyone for joining. I think let's start with the panelists. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves, say who you are, where you work, what your position is, what experience in technology and in cyber you have. So, Bill, let's start with you. Bill, I think you may be muted. Are you there? Or
This is Kevin. I can hear you, Bill.
Kevin, you want to start off?
Sure. Just so you know, yeah, I could hear Bill just fine. I have no idea why I can hear him, but you can't. But while he gets that figured out, yeah, I can introduce myself. So Kevin Switzer with Ingram Micro, and been with Ingram for a little over 13 years now. And for that entire time, I've been focused on technologies around Cisco systems. And when I first started out, it was kind of a jack of all trades, so collaboration, enterprise networks, and at that time, security fell under that as well. And moved into the field at one point when Cisco first came out with their UCS servers to headline that. And then about 7 years ago, when Cisco acquired SourceFire and decided to move security into its own architecture, then became entirely focused on Cisco security. And I'd say half my job right now is focused entirely on Cisco security, and the other half being just focusing on general cybersecurity as a whole, because we really have to track what's going on out there in the attacker world before we can really focus on any solution for it.
Gotcha. Cool. Thanks, Kevin. Jen, you want to go next?
Sure. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Hi, my name is Chang, but I go by Jen. I have been with MDS for about 3 years now. And at MDS, I'm a senior cybersecurity consultant, and I lead the security awareness training effort at MDS. And we've found some success with our customers, and I can't wait to share more with you.
Cool. Thank you, Jen. Bill, wasn't able to hear you before. Are you there?
I hear you, Bill.
Yep, Bill. Not sure why I can't hear you, Bill.
Same.
Jen, you don't either?
No.
Bill, you want to come out and back in, see if that.
Yeah, we can just wait for him. Why don't you start with the first question, first few questions?
Perfect. All right, let's go ahead. So this
Jaime?
is for you, Kevin. Yeah,
Hey,
Bill?
Jaime. Hey, I just dialed in. I don't know. Kevin could hear me earlier, and other people could, but for some reason you couldn't. So sorry about that. I called in on the phone. So.
No worries. Thanks, Bill. Cool. All right, so let's get started. So Bill, actually, this first question is going to be for you. So, how is the pandemic and the transition to having more remote users impacted the security of any given organization in terms of the individual user?
Yeah, it's how you mentioned at the top of this too. I mean, the most prevalent threat and breach tool is still email. That's still the preeminent model and vector that the actors are using too. What we've seen though over the last 6 months of 2019, especially into 2020, is a little bit more of the type of threat that's coming in, right? Too. So this is going to be no shock to anyone, but it's more related to COVID and World Health Organization at the beginning of all this too. So we track about 24 threat actors around the globe. These are state-sponsored actors. They're heavily financed actors. They're regional, sophisticated actors. We've never seen such. This is unprecedented, where we've seen every one of those get on that bandwagon of that theme. Usually, there's some disconnected, disparate, different types of themes. Seasonal themes like that. This is the first time we've seen. So that's one thing, which is not going to be a shock to anybody else. And then as customers have maybe accelerated their move to the cloud. I mean, that's obviously, as everybody knows, that provides more gaps and security leaks that the threat actors are extremely effective at taking advantage of. So, you look at compromised accounts, which I'm sure you've been talking about today, and looking at that way too, from those threat actors are using infrastructures of customers that the threat actors don't have to rely on using their own infrastructure. They can go in and use a customer's infrastructure. And unfortunately, it's probably an infrastructure that those customers trust inherently without even knowing that they're, compromised. So they can have not really an insider threat, but it looks like an insider threat too. So, and then one other point is, those threats are obviously human targeted. They're human activated. They want us to click on something, open something, or enter something. But the other thing is too, that relates to my last point, is that they are human adversary on the other end. They're human controlled. They're threat actor controlled. So you actually have a threat actor on the other side. I think of the top 20 threats that we saw, types of threats, only one of those 20 was actually a software-based threat. The other ones are all human controlled. But those are the big factors we've seen.
Cool. Thank you, Bill. Interesting. Let's move on to the next question. Kevin, so we usually think of security breaches as coming through emails and stemming from phishing, but what are some other ways that hackers can target individuals and organizations, and what can we do to prevent them?
Okay, so normally I would say typically 85 to 90% of all successful breaches do start with an email and simply through phishing. And that is typically because most workers are inside the office, they're behind a pretty good firewall, and that is pretty much the only way an attacker has to get someone to click on something and begin the malware process. But obviously things are a whole lot different right now. So let's start by mentioning security at home. So like I said, normally we're behind a firewall, we're in the office, things are pretty good there. But now everybody shifted to the work from home, and for many, it wasn't done with security top of mind. So it was simply, let's get people connected and access to the data and the tools that they need to perform their job functions, and not necessarily with, hey, how do we make sure everyone is secure? So we look at a few different scenarios. Kind of the better scenario, for example, myself, I live in a pretty remote area, where even at home, when I click on Wi-Fi on a device, I only see my own Wi-Fi and maybe one or two others. Also, I have pretty good security set up at home. My job is in security. I have a good security mentality. I'm used to working remotely and things like that. Now, I am not the normal, obviously. So now we have a lot of people shifting to whatever their home network may be. And I would love to hear that every company out there was able to deploy, an at-home secure router of some sorts, but we know that's just not feasible. So thinking that, everyone just doesn't have that security at home. Also, we talk about the secure mentality. So most people don't really fully understand security and how things work and how to be secure. So we certainly have gaps there from, knowing what to look for and making sure your own home router is locked down, things like that, having your Wi-Fi set in, things like that. Also, if you're working in like an inner city and you're in an apartment complex and you have, a whole lot of people there, you can see a whole bunch of Wi-Fi. There's a lot of potential holes there and people there that potentially could do some harm. Also, this stat actually came from Proofpoint, is that only about 32% of workers out there have access to VPN, or either don't know if they have access to VPN. So that is starting kind of a startling statistic right there, which certainly would help be secure. So we have all of these factors, and it's mainly okay, I'm not in the office, I am now working from home. So this really opened up a whole lot of different gaps for attackers to come in. So now they're looking to come in through your Wi-Fi and things like that. And also we talk about the distraction factor. Now it's reasonable to assume that most employees are able to go to the office, 9 to 5, and pretty much leave their personal lives at the door, come in and be focused, at a good workstation and things like that. And be able to notice certain things that may jump out at them as, hey, this doesn't seem legitimate. But now we have factors like we're working from home. You may have kids at home or your significant other also on meetings at the same time. So it's not the as focused workstation as what we're used to. So things that we may have typically noticed as, hey, this doesn't seem right, versus now we have all these other things going on. Also maybe working from a tablet because that's all I have available to me to work from. So that kind of factors in as well. And also taking a look at the specific attackers, they have shifted their focus pretty dramatically. And of the major ransomware groups out there, several of them actually said we're going to stop attacking healthcare providers during the pandemic, part of which there is honor amongst thieves. They knew how devastating that potentially could be, but also from a scare perspective. They know that if they were to take down a hospital and cause just catastrophic things, that law enforcement would get their attention and would go after them. So they have really shifted their focus to these remote workers. And NetWalker is one of the major ransomware groups out there, and this comes from the FBI. They know of, and this is what they know of, there could be more, but they know that since March, this ransomware group has profited $25 million simply by attacking work from home users using a remote desktop protocol. So with all that, I would say as far as getting around the whole email thing, just these work from home factors and all these security gaps is the ways that these attackers are now getting in.
Yeah, Kevin, that's not. Can I add one point to kind of?
Of course, go ahead, Bill.
Add to your last point there too. The other thing that we see, to Kevin's point about targeted attacks on the remote workers, that's another thing we've seen in 2020. One would think that you'd see this waterfall of increased amount of attacks, and that's the opposite of what we saw. We saw actually a decrease in number of attacks, but very, very specific, sophisticated, targeted attacks to what Kevin's talking about too. So if somebody has, very valuable data, it's not like a blanket attack they're going to do. They're especially those, those bigger, sophisticated attackers like he's mentioning. That's what we saw as well in a trend in 2020.
Great, thanks, Bill. That's a good insight. Okay, moving on. This next question is for Jen. So Jen, you've obviously you've done an amazing job spearheading the security awareness training practice here at MDS over the past year or so. So what are some of the best practices you've noticed?
Yeah, so it's always a process for us to develop these kind of training programs, as we at MDS always aim to tailor them based on the customer's organization. So I would say the first step in these best practices is to figure out what kind of training would benefit their team. Are the team more likely to respond well to face-to-face training, webinar training, or more likely to finish those training with a computer-based module? We have found success in both, with an element of gamification in these training sessions. The second step for me is the frequency of training. So I take a look at the poll, and I've seen that if you only do simulated tests once per quarter, it is good, but it's not ideal. Your users need constant reminders, and the hackers and the spammers are always evolving the ways they reach the user inboxes. We have found it best to phish user every single week, as users' phish-prone percentage goes down, and the user report for those simulated phish goes up. Generally, those best practices are: number one, you need organization-wide participation. You need top-down buy-in and participation as well. You need to establish a link between testing and training. A regular schedule should be established so these two activities happen in conjunction and complementary of one another. You need baseline measurements. You need to determine your starting point and track all of your progress. You should do frequent reporting so the higher ups are in the loop about how the program is going. And last but not least, you need reinforcement. You need to remind your user frequently of the important concepts of security best practices. So those are the things that I figure out after doing this for a while.
Awesome. Thank you, Jen. Okay, great. Moving on to the next question. This one's open for all you guys to chip in. So security awareness training is to help reduce risk, right? However, it does involve an investment, a cost. So how can CISOs and cybersecurity IT personnel get the buy-in from the high executives like CFOs and CEOs? How do they determine ROI to ensure their investment was effective in security awareness training?
I can start off if you like. I'm going to dovetail into a couple of things you just said, Jen, as well too. When we talk to CISOs too, they look at it as an investment, that's true, but they also look at it as a bit of an insurance policy. So, from a dollars and cents, it's an ROI to say, hey, it's saved us this much money. That's not really the way to look at it. You're looking at how do you reduce the susceptibility or the risk of your end users? That's what you want to look at measurement. So a couple key ones out of the box that are classic are you want to reduce click rates through the assessments that a classic phishing campaign and things like that. You can monitor that and see that. But Jen's point, I think it's in our philosophy within Proofpoint is that that education, how effective that education and awareness is, because you want to see that susceptibility go down. So, in our platform, and this is not a sales pitch, it's just our philosophy. We have a very, very robust reporting system that can get really, really detailed. Now, for customers who are looking at compliance, we mentioned the once a year type of thing. At this point in time, in their mind, that might not be that important. But in this world, you want to track and see how your end users are improving. Now, you can do by phishing campaigns. You can also do by knowledge assessments, which is another assessment that we deploy. And a lot of people are doing that to set baseline. So instead of one email campaign, you might send out a 20-question quiz on malicious URLs. And that's a great way to see if those scores are improving after you do the training, right? So that's the importance to Jen's point is why you want to have that continuous training program too. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I think security is tricky in ways that you don't notice how well it's going if it's successful. And our aim in security is to reduce or eliminate those risks. And if there are no issues, that means you're doing fine. However, we can point to past security incidents or breaches to determine how costly a mistake it would make. And it's always be better safe than sorry. Companies are constantly going out of business due to the financial burden that comes with a breach or your reputation being tarnished. And another things that companies have to remember is security awareness training has become a part of compliance. So people have to have those training in order to get to avoid getting fined.
Yeah, that's a point. That way you can dollarize it. Yep. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Kevin.
Yeah, I agree with everything that was just said, and not a whole lot left to say, but I guess I'll throw this out that, yeah, it's a very tough subject to broach because it's very difficult to put a number at something that didn't happen. You know, you could compare it to driving and say, well, I didn't get into 1, 2, or 3 accidents this year because I took a driving class or something. But so it's kind of difficult to say what the cost would have been if we had not done this. And I mean, just to throw the number out there, the current average cost for an SMB in a major breach is 3.9 million, but that is such a varying number business to business that I don't even, you know, suggest throwing that number out there to a CFO. But again, it's really about, yeah, like Bill mentioned, focusing on what we had. We ran a dry run, and then after the training, we have less clicks, we have less potential of a breach, and that's really the way to go at it.
Yeah, and to add one other thing in there too, you know, if you can, it's key to identify who's targeted and who's at risk, right? So you can see who's susceptible by the assessments and the quizzes, who just doesn't know. You know, if my role is to process POs, I'm not necessarily security minded, like Kevin was mentioning, and that's fine. That's not the end user's primary role. Starting at the email security, you know, the security email gateway, if you could one of those in place, you can identify who is a target, you know, who has the inbound real world threats coming at them. If Bill Hallett's getting targeted by malicious URLs, that's valuable knowledge to know. We can stop that. We can get Bill trained on malicious URLs. So you've identified who's an actual target. Then you've identified who is susceptible through assessments and get them trained. And so those are 2 key elements. So you see the real world threats and then the potential. And if you can say, all right, we're stopping these incoming threats, we're making Bill smarter, those are good ways to quantify that as well. So you can monitor and you can say, hey, this is worth what we're doing here for the awareness training.
Absolutely. Great. Thanks, guys. Let's move on to the next question. So there's a lot currently going on in the world, right? Whether it's the COVID pandemic, the election, wildfires, hurricanes, etc. Hackers will always target people using these current events since they know people are paying attention to them, right? So what is the best practice for staying alert but also informed?
So I guess I could start this one out. The first piece of advice that I would give when it comes to national or international or any type of social event news that's going on, just don't click on anything in any email, whether it's coming from a work email or a personal email. To stay up on the news, have your sources, your websites established, have bookmarks to them, and go to those websites for news. And if you know an email happens to come in with you know a super hot topic in the subject, and you really want to find out or learn about this news because it could be important to you, don't click on it. Go to your favorite search engine and do a search of it, or on the news site, do a search of it and see if it comes up, because at least you know that site is a site you've used and is something you can rely on. But just any email, don't click on the link, go somewhere else that you can rely on and look it up.
Yeah, and from like a training user perspective, one trick I usually use is to incorporate these topics into the simulated phishing emails that I send out to the users. With enough exposure and training, the users should be able to discern for the most part, those simulated tests that have these topics and report them. But one advice that applies to any time, any situation, always think before you click and double and triple check your sources, as Kevin said.
Yeah, I just got the classic, my Amazon order was being processed from my Xbox gift card and everything too. So I didn't order that. So, you know, it's easy enough to go back out and sign in. But yeah, on the proof point side, I think one big advantage that we were Wombat before, you know, so we were a global security awareness training platform, but we didn't have the advantage of sitting in an email security chain, right? So where Proofpoint acquired us, that gave us an advantage to see what those real world threats are coming in. So Proofpoint sees close to 25% of the global email traffic from a security aspect. That's a huge benefit to have integrated into your security awareness training. So, and how that's impactful is that, you know, with these evolving threats, I mean, that threat intel and threat landscape is evolving so quickly now, especially in 2020. One good example, World Health Organization, I think I mentioned it briefly earlier, but you know, that was a really, really huge it was the biggest compromised brand for a while, and they didn't have their email authenticated, right? So it was an easy target. And you imagine at the beginning of this, the World Health Organization, it was critical for them to get information out. However, that was a really, really good vehicle for threat actors. So we could farm those templates out of the inbound templates in our email security tools, make them safe, and then put them out into a training template, or just at that point in time, it was so volatile, we just put them out for awareness. It was more of a proactive alert to say, hey, this is what's coming in, this is what we're seeing globally, look out for this. We just kind of a, hey, raise the red flag to your users. And then as it calmed down, we start using those. But we see those every day and every week that we can use to open the end user's eyes of these are the actual real world threats that are coming in. And then you can train on those type things too. So it's kind of dovetailing on what Joe's saying.
Great, thank you guys. We have a couple questions here from the audience. So Siriram asks, what type of frameworks can be used to map awareness training to job roles and functions while mapping it to a competency and capability-based assessment while simultaneously creating linkage to job performance appraisal? So you guys can see the questions on the side if you want to.
Okay. Ken, I don't know if you want to jump in on that since you have experience. I can certainly feel that if you like. That's.
Tell you what, I'm just looking it over. Why don't you jump on that, and I'll add additional thoughts after you.
Okay. I think I understand the question correctly. You want to have for an individual, you want to see how well they're doing and how well they're improved and what their interaction is with the training to map it to a job performance and things you might have in an annual review or something like that too. So I mentioned the reporting tool. Any good security awareness platform should have a very, very robust reporting tool. You can break that down by user groups. You can break that down by departments, locations, individual. And then, like we have customer success managers that work strategically with our customers to say, well, what are you trying to measure? What's important to you in this person's role? What you mentioned, I think role-based as well. You can do it role-based in the platform as well to have those reports. You can report out on that weekly, monthly, quarterly, so the end users get that feedback. To Jen's point, you want to have that continuous feedback throughout the year. But those are inherent features that should be in an effective security awareness platform. Hopefully that hits the root of the question.
Yeah, and to add to that, like I mentioned before, at MDS, when we craft out all of the security programs to a customer, we always aim to tailor it based on the customer's needs. So it's always going to be based on the roles of the users you want to train. For instance, we have different training module and training sessions for users who are IT admins, users who deal with sensitive information like financial data and stuff like that. So it's definitely something that any good platform for security awareness training that can be customized based on your needs.
Yeah, you live that all the time.
Right.
I mean, that's what you see work with strategically because everyone's a little different, right? Every customer wants to get a little something different out of it.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. We have one more question here. So what do you say is an appropriate MOS COW for awareness training, both from the governance side as well as from the implementation side? Is that?
Are either of you familiar with that term, Moscow for awareness training?
I'm not.
I am not.
There's a new one on me.
Can you expand on what you mean by Moscow?
Yeah, can you give?
Siriram, can you please perhaps insert on the question chat? In the meantime, why don't we discuss one last question which I had from my end. Do you guys think that security awareness training should be mandatory in all organizations?
Oh, absolutely. So there are financial incentives to it. So meaning that if your employees are well informed and aware of the risk factors out there, you are less likely to have a breach that started by human mistakes and does not have to spend copious amounts of money trying to patch issues or pay for ransomware. So your reputation on the line with every breach. You don't want to be a part of that statistic. Your last line of defense is your human firewall. So train them well.
Of course.
Yeah, and obviously I concur with that too. I mean, back to the initial metrics you mentioned, I mean, about 95% of those threats are inbound through email. That is, and a couple of years ago it was 92%. Last year was 90. So it's not going away. The number one threat is getting more number oneer, if you will. So yeah, I mean that's I obviously I would think that too. And I will say too, that's what we're seeing in the market, and we're seeing that. For instance, as an example, more and more of our customers are using it for onboarding new employees. I think about 85% of our customers now use our like a cyber strength as a quiz to really get a good baseline on that. So they have a good value baseline to continue that thing too. But absolutely, I mean, it's the number one threat. You'd be really having yourself unnecessarily exposed to threat if you didn't have something in place, because it affects people at home too in their private life.
See, and I looked at that question as trying to challenge myself to think of what type of job out there would I actually say as a security professional. No, you do not need any type of security training awareness. And I was really racking my brain for that. Now, I'm sure there are some jobs out there that do not touch the internet at all. But I was really thinking hard, trying to think of any one of them specifically. Just about every job out there now touches the internet in some shape or form, at least taking care of, well, I did this work, which, is manual labor, but I still have to go online to log my time or do a report for my management or something like that. So the very high level answer I would give, yes, everyone really should have security awareness training unless their job does not touch the internet whatsoever.
Right. Thanks for that softball question, Jaime. That was a good one. But yeah, it's imperative and critical nonetheless. I don't mean to make light of it, but it's critical.
Yeah, no, but absolutely. Security awareness training is something all organizations should definitely have. Just to wrap up, because we're at the minute now, but so CRM, you responded that stands for must have, should have, could have. So what would you say is an appropriate must have, should have, could have for awareness training, both from the governance side as well as from the implementation side?
I would say buy-in from the higher ups and the organization as a whole, a good training program, including schedule and the sessions, and a good training platform.
Yeah, that mindset.
Right, yeah.
The end user that needs they need to understand the why. That to Jen's point, she's made it eloquently so many times today, that those end users need to understand why, because there's a lot of companies that the end users still think it's an IT problem or a security team's problem. They don't see themselves as part of the security of the company, which that's a culture change and a behavior change. Even before you implement a SaaS program and send out your first phishing campaign, that's vital.
Yeah.
Then I also say part of the must-have on the user side is just that make sure it's relevant to the actual specific job role and function of that individual, and have the content match that.
Yeah, and I just want to point out one thing I just saw on the poll is the question is, what is your biggest cybersecurity headache? And 37% of you said my user. So you came to the right session.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And then thanks so much, guys, for joining, responding to these questions. A lot of good information today. Security awareness training is indeed imperative for all organizations, something to take very, very seriously. Appreciate you all for joining today. Sam, back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you again. Again, any questions comes up, I can always connect you with our engineers. So thank you, Jaime, Kevin, Trang, and Bill. Again, it's always a pleasure working with you and listening to you guys. So we're going to jump into Datto. It's another one of our sponsors of this event. So Desiree, are you on? Can we hear you? Can you hear us? It looks like you're on. There you are. Looks like you're muted. If you're having trouble with your microphone, it seems like Chrome, you need to have permission. You have to give it permission. You can always try calling in. That's also an option. There you are. Hi, Desiree. So yeah, you can get started. You will have your 20 minutes, so 2:35. And so if you want to share your screen, I will stop sharing mine, and you're good to go.
Again, I heard that works really well to set things up. So thank you for everyone for your patience in me getting that all set up. I'm going to cover actually pretty much everything that you guys did in the first session. So you pretty much did my job for me. Just going to add Dado to the rest of that. So thank you for that as well. I'm going to be talking about today MSPs and how working with a managed service provider, so that's an MSP or an IT service provider, can really help you in your fight against on the war on cybercrime. To introduce myself, and I wanted to make sure you guys recognized me in my outside of my normal everyday costume. So I am your cybercrime fighter. I'm one of the channel development managers here at Dado, and what that normally means is I attend these events live. I go and talk on stage in person. I generally travel about 70% of the time, and now I've been stuck at home for 220 days, and it's been a really long time. But thank you so much for having me. I love security. I love talking about security, and I love doing these presentations with you guys all the time. So to kind of give you a little bit of a history about Dado in the first place, we're a massive company worldwide, but why have you never, there's a good chance you've never heard of us before. And that's because we help support IT service providers or managed service providers in the products and the tools that they need to help protect and help service their small to medium-sized businesses that they work with. So we were founded in 2007. We've been grown drastically, over 1,900 employees worldwide. I'm coming to you from Calgary, Alberta, where it's freezing right now already, and I really wish that I could be in the US instead of here. So I'm going to talk a lot about what the threats are, what the industry is, and what we're seeing across the board. And really, when it comes down to it, there's threats all around us. But I wanted to break up those threats into two different kind of buckets. So first, we're looking at that compromised identity and compromised access bucket. What does that actually look like? So that's going to be those phishing campaigns that you see or you hear about all the time, where people are trying to get information from you to either sell or use against you, something along that line. So identity theft being one of those examples. Or when we go back and we're talking about the compromised access, that might be, say, one of your employees who's left the company and has taken information with them, or they're with you and they're stealing information as they're working with it, and you're not really sure what that looks like. So really, compromised identity is going to be people who are stealing your information to impersonate you, or, in the scary part, talk about the dark web. I'm going to talk about the dark web in a little bit more as well. A good example of identity theft or information theft like that is going to be one of the greatest casino heists. So normally, if you're to think about a casino heist, you're going to think about me and Brad Pitt, best friends, hanging out. You got a big vault in a casino, and it's a whole lot of steps. Nowadays, things are changing, and especially with IoT devices, especially in the work from anywhere environment that we were in, you need to think about how your IoT devices are connected. With this example that we're talking about, specifically, we're talking about an IoT device. So you take a big casino hotel in Vegas, and they have now IoT devices for all their thermometers, which completely makes sense because that's going to save a lot of time, right? But unfortunately, they actually had all that information on the same network as all of their information for their high rollers. So the bad guys were able to go access the network via the fish tank thermometers and then stole all of their high rollers' data. That's a huge thing. And then we talk about ransomware. So ransomware is that other thing. We've heard of it all day today. I'm sure you see it in the news every day. But ransomware, where attackers break into your computer and then lock everything, and they steal they have all your information. It's locked. You have no access to it. And now they're offering a nice service for you to be able to pay them to access your own information. Ransomware is jumping up drastically. Even in the last Q2 of this year, we're seeing it jumped up 300% in just Q2 of this year. So it's crazy how much money can be made in this industry, and that's why it's never going to go anywhere. A couple of years ago, I just like this, show you a good ransomware story. This is one of the very first ransomwares that ever came out that was tying together social engineering with ransomware. So with this ransomware specifically, popcorn time, you had an opportunity. You got this, it locked your computers, and now you had a choice. You either pay the bad guys, which is never a good idea, which I'll talk about in a minute, or you can send to two people you may or may not like anymore. I'm sure they're not going to like you after you do this, so I don't recommend this, but that's where social engineering. So they were getting really, really smart. When we talk about ransomware back in the old days, where we're thinking about the movie Hackers, it's a couple of kids just messing around, trying to see what they can do. Well, now this is big, big business. And so when hackers are locking their computers, they are giving you full support systems to be able to access your information. They have ransomware as a service. This is around the world in any language. They'll help you out in any language as soon as they lock your computer. It doesn't matter where you are. Massive, massive business. Another example of a big ransomware that was hit, we talk about this company right here. When they got hit, they had over 24,000 laptops broken or locked down. So they're like done and out. Of course, they're really lucky because they had insurance. So they're like, okay, we're not going to pay the bad guys. Once again, still a bad idea. I'll talk about that in a second. Never pay the bad guys. But they're also, now they have to spend a whole bunch of money with their insurance. So they go over their insurance and said, hey, we were making an insurance claim. And the insurance company was like, no, this is not, your insurance doesn't actually cover this, because they clarified it as a hostile or warlike action. So it wasn't actually insurable. And so they're still fighting with the insurance company, and that's another story. But it's just really important. A lot of the times when you're looking at the lines of defense, people are looking at being like, we have ransomware insurance. We're protected, right? Things are changing so quickly that you have to double check, because that insurance might not even cover you anymore. And it's running rapid. It's we look at the beginning of March when Zoom first, like March 5th, I got grounded and I've been home ever since. And by March, I think it was 20th, Zoom was already getting hit with ransomware. The bad guys recognized that there was an opportunity here with everyone in this work from home world at the time, and now work from anywhere, that making the switch, security wasn't something in the forefront of people's minds. They just needed to be able to get home and do their job safely and securely. And then before I do any presentations like this, I like to take a look at the news and articles that have been happening kind of around the world in the US just really recently. And as you can see, there's a ton of news articles that are super relevant in just the last 6 months of our lives. And then what I found today, which I thought was super interesting, that I go back again and say, you're not supposed to pay the bad guys. The US government is catching up with that. And it's getting to the point where there's sanctions saying that if you pay the bad guys, you're funding dark web, you're funding bad, horrible things in that dark web, that you might actually be violating US sanctions. That happened in the news 3 days ago that was posted. So it is changing constantly and really, really relevant. So I'm going to talk about kind of what the internet actually looks like in the first place. A lot of the times when I attend these events live, a lot of people always ask me, like, well, why don't the police just do something about this? Well, that's because the dark web is a massive, massive, horrible, horrible place. Ton of information, but on a day-to-day basis, you, I, and most of the people we're interacting with are using a very limited 4% of the internet. I've never been in the deep web. I've never been in the dark web. And that's where all of those bad guys are hanging out. With the release of Bitcoin and ransomware, it gave the opportunity where bad guys are able to make money without anybody recognizing it. And that's the reason why the government can't keep up with all of these bad actors that are out there, because they come out so quickly and they can hide really, really easily. And then just kind of talking about the evolution of cyber threats. When we talk about the evolution of the entire world throughout history, every time there's a big technology advancement, there's a bad guy who's following right with that. So in 1834, the French telegraph system was hacked. And then we're looking within 2016 to 2018, and then even within 2020, in the last 3 months, the ransomware security breaches are going up and up and up and skyrocketing. I wanted to spend some time and talk about how this is directly affecting the SMB industry. So you guys, in your day-to-day, what does this actually look like? So some interesting statistics. 43% of all cyber attacks are aimed at small to medium-sized businesses, specifically this industry. 85% of all email attachments are harmful. When I talk about 85% of email attachments being harmful, I always feel really bad for the HR person. I think about the HR person, and you're doing a hiring spree, and whether you're doing it by different systems or just straight up old school emails, think about how many emails they have to open up. And yes, we're all doing security training. We were just in the presentation before this, we talked about security training is so, so important. But people are busy. There's things going on. There's a lot of the times that you're going from one thing to the next, especially now I'm webinar with no breaks in between. When I'm going through my emails, I might not look close enough. So if 85% of the email attachments I'm getting on a day-to-day basis are harmful, there's a chance that something's going to squeak through. 91% of attacks are launched from a phishing campaign. So, and we used to think that those phishing campaigns were super easy to see. If the language isn't proper, the grammar isn't right, those phishing campaigns are getting more intense every day. And if somebody is trying to attack you specifically, the phishing campaigns are crazy. I was in a meeting where we were talking about a CFO and a CEO, and they had dinner with their wives the day before, and one of them was going on vacation. The next day, before he got on vacation, the one who wasn't going on vacation ended up getting an email saying, great dinner last night, so-and-so cooked such a great meal, you're going on vacation tomorrow, don't forget, can you send me that check? I just forgot to talk to you about last night. That's a phishing email, and that is a harmful link, and that's a lot of information to be carrying, personal about somebody. Cybercrime will cost $6 trillion by 2021. I don't think there's anyone in the world who would argue it's going to probably be a lot more than that. This one shocked me. 24,000 malicious apps are removed from the App Store daily. So those are the ones that are actually caught right away and removed. Quite shocking there as well. Ransomware is up 180% from 2018. Even more, but those numbers, I need to update that slide because it's even right this quarter, we're seeing such drastic numbers. And then this one, really important to point out, and this stops my heart every time I'm in a presentation, I'm doing this. A business is hit with ransomware every 13 seconds. So any event, anytime I'm in a conversation, when someone says to me, well, what are the likelihood of me getting hit with ransomware? Every 13 seconds. It's not a matter of if you're going to get hit, it's when you're going to be hit. Are you going to be prepared? So talk a little bit, I'm not going to go one by one, but who are these bad guys even, right? You look at You hack and collect those IoT devices. We talk about IoT devices as a huge threat that's coming up right now. Ransomware developers, they can now sell ransomware as a service, so bad guys can purchase it. And it's not necessarily even bad guys. Like sometimes it's just some person who doesn't have a job trying to feed their family. What can they do? Nation state, unfortunately, there's countries around the world who don't like Canada or the US, so they're trying to steal information from us. And then it really just goes on. If there's money to be made, the bad guys are there, and those who these threats are, and are willing that there's opportunity here. So how do you protect your business from all of this craziness? I've got a couple of tips and tricks. First, and once again, this was all covered a little bit earlier, but hopefully you can take something out of it. One, always remember that you're target online and offline. Don't, once again, say it's not going to happen to me, because it will. Even this, to me, it was really interesting. A cybersecurity expert, he's the one who's sitting there being like, this is my job, this is what I do. And he got hacked too. It does happen. It's a matter of what are you going to do afterwards when that happens? How do you protect yourself? You need to make sure that you have policies and procedures in place. MSPs like Maureen Data Systems can actually help you with that. They'll work you through that. An IT service provider, talk to the professional if they're going to be able to help you with your policies and procedures to make sure that business is secure. Ongoing employee training. This isn't a matter of once every 6 months or twice every 6 months. You need to constantly be training your staff and then testing them. Here at Datto, we still get email tests all the time where it's a click this link, and if you click that link, then we'll get pulled into a training. I just don't open any emails anymore, so my boss really loves that. No, I'm joking. That's not a good way to get around that, but make sure that you are security testing your staff. Password management. I worked at a password security solution prior to putting at Datto, and this is near to my heart. It's crazy to this day that the number one passwords are still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or when you're passwords that are, when people are using passwords that are more complex, they're just adding an extra letter or number at the end, or they're changing a combination that they have on all of their or changing a combination of letters that they usually use. If you're not using a password manager, please look into it. If I have any tips and tricks for password management specifically, use a password manager. If you're not going to do that, make sure that your passwords are at least unique. Never use the same passwords across your social and business accounts. Make sure that your staff aren't using the same passwords across each accounts. Those are really, really important things. And then never leave devices unattended. Now we're kind of all home, so it's a little bit different. But even now, like I talk to small to medium-sized businesses and technicians and everybody, and people, their computers are being used by their kids and by their families, and their kids are working and playing games on the same network that they're using their same computer on. So making sure that you understand what your device is actually doing and actually accessible is really important. This is a fun example that I like to put of when we talk about being careful what you're posting and being careful what you look at. This is the guy in Hawaii who does all of the alerting for Hawaii. So he lets everyone know, hey, there's something bad happening. I'm going to let everybody know. And this is his LinkedIn profile. And that's his password to his computer. Passwords are your greatest risk. People are your greatest risk. We unfortunately don't always think things through. And sometimes we just get stuck in a certain routine. So we don't recognize the fact that we need to be more vigilant. Vigilant? That's definitely not the word. Be careful what you click. Avoid visiting unknown websites when you're not sure. When we were talking about when COVID first happened, we looked at, you guys are talking about it earlier today, but even in Canada, the very first contract tracing apps that came out were actually released not by the government, but by the bad guys. The very first search engines for what's happening in COVID and what are the numbers, they're giving the proper right information, but the link is giving malware and doing bad things to your computer at the same time. And then I said it before and I'll say it again, people will always be your greatest risk. Nowadays, especially when people are working from home and they're not really sure about security. It happens in the news every single day. We're seeing these bad attacks where the draining bank accounts. I've had 2 of my friends, personal friends, parents who've had their bank accounts drained. I tell them now to be trained and train everyone around you, and let all your people in your life know that no, you don't give someone your bank information over the phone. That's not good. No, someone isn't watching you or hopefully not watching you from your computer. Things like that. Don't give money to bad guys. Antivirus and malware protection. And then a mobile device policy. A mobile device policy is a really important thing. Again, a few years ago, we talked about protecting a computer. This is very important. You have one computer, you protect it. Now we have to talk about protecting a person. Every single person has how many? I know I've got 3 devices right within arm's reach of me right here. So making sure that as a business, you are understanding where your staff are accessing their information. Do they understand that they need to have a password protected on their phone if they're accessing their email on their phone? Things like that. Security testing and configurations. Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And so now I'm going to talk about backups, business continuity backups, and really why do you need to have that information? There's a lot of expectations around backup. What I want to talk about here is business continuity and why the difference between backing up in your information and having a business continuity plan is so important. And the easiest way to talk about that is to talk about RPO and RTO. So that is how often you're backing up your information, and then how quickly you can access that information if you need to. So say you're thinking you're a university professor and you're grading papers and you only back up your information once a day. Now you might spend 8 hours grading papers and you lose all that information. Well, that's a whole day's work. And then maybe it takes you 3 days to get back up and running to where you were. Well, now you're down 4 days plus a lot of hours and time and effort even to get back up and running. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about in just a second, RTO and RPO, on what that cost actually is to a business. So what's easiest way when we talk about backup is to talk about what's not business continuity. So cloud only, local including tape. When was the last time? A lot of the times we talk to at events and people are like, well, I have a backup. I put it in the safe every day. When was the last time you tested it? Does it actually work? Could you be back up and running in minutes? And then file-based backup, if my computer was smashed right now, I can go into another computer and go back exactly the way my computer is running. Everything's saved. Everything's exactly the way I need it to be. So with Data Solution, we're improving your business continuity solution, giving you a hybrid cloud-based backup, an image-based backup. So literally, like I said, you can be back up on your running one computer to the next. If somebody came and smashed my computer right now, you have that. So it's keeping that RTO and RPO down really low. And then really the point of all of this is eliminating that downtime, and then virtualization being able to virtualize onto a computer from wherever you are at any point in time. But that's not it. Ransomware detection. So this is one of the really good features that we have. With our ransomware detection, we take a snapshot of one backup, a snapshot of another, and if all of a sudden we notice that there's a difference between the two, we'll take a look, go back to the original restore and say, hey, let's look at the systems and see if something was clicked and what that actually download was. Sometimes it's bad. Majority of the time it's bad, but sometimes it's not. But at least we're learning and trying to help you through that scenario. So we stop thinking about traditional backup and start thinking business continuity, being up and run with all of your data. And this is where I want to talk about SaaS protection. So right now on a day-to-day basis, you're working in your emails all the time. G Suite, Office 365 is the first thing I open up in the day and the last thing I go to look at before I go to bed at night. But why do you need to back that up? 1 in 3 companies are losing SaaS data. So this isn't necessarily on purpose. Sometimes it could be just Jenny who just thought she was helping and just started deleting things. But how do you access that information again? And then there's by accident or on purpose, where you might have, say, someone who's leaving your company and doesn't want you to see what they've been up to, so that they delete everything. So there's bad guys who will do things like that as well. And then we start talking about Ransom Cloud. Ransom Cloud is now ransomware that's specifically focused on Office 365 and G Suite. With this is an example of what this actually looks like, but you get an email like this, Anti-Spam Pro, quick update. Yes, Friday, even though you've gone through security training, you're busy, it's 4 p.m., you want to get out of the office, you want to go for dinner. This looks pretty legit. I'm going to click and update my Anti-Spam Pro because that's what I need to do. And now all my emails are gone. If you lost all of your emails right now, would you be able to continue to do your job? And this is why having a backup is so, so important. We have a video that we can send to you at any point in time. Please reach out to myself, or Samantha can help you as well. What we can send, and there is a video. This is Kevin Mitnick. Kevin Mitnick's the bad guy from the 80s who was on the FBI's most wanted list. He went to jail, got out of jail, and now he's a good guy. And this is what he does. He talks about SaaS protection, why you need SaaS protection, what is ransomware, what is ransom cloud. So when I talk about the recovery, I wanted to talk again about this recovery downtime calculator. This is something that you can sit a couple 10 simple questions and actually go through and see what your downtime would cost your business. So seconds on your side, 10 questions, and you can actually go down and find the exact downtime cost within your business if you don't have a backup solution. Now, if you have a backup solution like Datto, a business continuity solution like Datto, you'll be back up and running, and you can save yourself that downtime cost. So I covered a ton of information there. Please check out our Kevin Mitnick video. Please reach out with any questions, and you can reach out to Samantha at any point in time. We'd love to help you out with anything you have. And then I think I managed to do it right on time there.
You did a good job. So we did have a few questions. We have to move on to the next session, but you should be able to see the questions, and you can reply directly in the private chat if you want, or you can reply right there. And then, so if not, I can connect you with whoever was asking for it. And thank you again, Jess, for everything. It was a really good presentation and very entertaining as well.
Perfect. I will stop.
Perfect. So the next, we have another sponsor speaker session right now. And this is Ilya from Netrix. Ilya, you're on. I was chatting with you a second ago.
Hello.
I can't hear you. I'm not sure if the attendees can or not. It seems to be working if people call in, if that's an issue, but you're also muted right now. So
yeah, just I'm unmuted. Does this help?
Yes, it does.
Okay,
perfect.
Good. All right, let me see if I can share the slides here. Okay, I have to drop them in. All right, give me a second.
And 3 o'clock is the time for you. So
I can definitely do that. All right, so give me a second here. And all right, I'm uploading the slides now, so hopefully you can see them in a second. Tells me it is converting now. Anyways, while the slides are uploading and converting, really quickly, my name is Ilya Sotnikov. I'm the VP of Product Management here at Netrix. And what we are going to talk about today, and the slides are coming up just in time, are the challenges in securing Microsoft 365 services. I will try to keep it on time and at the same time educational. So I will also have my contact information on the last slide. So if there are any follow-up questions, definitely feel free to reach out. So I will talk about 3 challenges today. The number 1 challenge is there are way too many security options with different Microsoft 365 bundles. And I think many of you are familiar already if you ever tried to make sense of Microsoft 365 plans and how this is related to Office 365 plans, and how is this related to Enterprise Mobility Plus Security and what are the additional add-ons? What is the Azure Active Directory a premium plan there, and how it is all related. So just recently, I had a conversation with someone who was very confused and thought that Microsoft 365 and Office 365 is essentially the same thing. As you can see on the diagram here, and this is, I understand, an eye chart, these are not the same thing. And from security perspective, there are at least a dozen different security options and interfaces and portals that are scattered around different tools. When you look at E5 plans that are additional on top of what E3 has, you get even more, and there are different ways you can license this and you can buy this. And these charts I actually borrowed from the community, right? There is someone who is sharing these and keeping them up to date on GitHub. So I include the link here in the slide. I can post that in the chat later as well. So this is the kind of challenge that you have to realize as you are choosing the options that you have for securing your Office 365 environment. So that's number one challenge. The second challenge there is that you need to know what data needs protection and where it is. So you have multiple services, you have OneDrive, you have SharePoint online, you've got Exchange online, you've got multiple Teams conversations and channels. And you may have the information policy, you may have the sensitive data protection policy. You probably have tools and controls. Let's assume you could get through the licensing hurdles. However, you still need to know what is that data that needs protection and where it is. Obviously, user trainings are important and will help you with that. Also, there are some automated tools that or some built-in tools that are available within Microsoft 365 world. However, most of them are either manual labeling driven, so you can have sensitivity labels added to your data. And I'm sorry for the hiccups on the slide. That's unfortunate. That was part of the slide conversion. Anyways, there are ways to manually classify these documents, and Office 365 gives you those options. However, there are some difficulties with that. First of all, they depend on the users, and users want to be productive with what they need to do, with what they need to achieve, with whatever the business task is at hand right now. Not necessarily doing the custodian work, and not necessarily spending their time labeling documents. Another important aspect there is that manual labeling is only invoked when data is being touched. So whether a user is creating a document or saving it or making any modifications, and that's great, but there, as we all know, the vast majority of data is just sitting somewhere. And so once you launch this effort, it will not necessarily be labeled. And so piles of sensitive information, personal information, or depending on your industry, other regulated data such as health or payment information may be residing somewhere where you don't know it is. And so your security efforts, your protection efforts, without that first critical identification step, may not achieve the results you need. And then classification that actually enables a lot of the protection features and data leak prevention and all of that other good stuff that Office 365 and Microsoft 365 services provide. Unfortunately, that is only available in E5 plans, which might be a little bit too steep of a price step or price increase for you if you just want to do that. So that is a challenge that you need to think about and consider. And then finally, the last challenge that we are hearing from our clients and partners when we talk to them is that very rarely companies are 100% cloud. Not every workload is in the cloud, and most of the companies are still in some form of a hybrid environment. So what does that mean, and how is this related to the security features that Office 365 and Microsoft 365 services provide to you? Unfortunately, they don't give you the consistency to manage security for your hybrid environments. All the great new stuff that Microsoft builds and provides as part of those services is available for Office 365 primarily. Yes, Microsoft Information Protection, Azure Information Protection services do have some components that can be downloaded and extended to file shares on premises if you have that. However, that is not enough, and this does not cover other services that you might have. It doesn't cover, for example, any databases that you might have. It doesn't cover any other sharing environments that you might have. So for the consistent tools to secure your data in the cloud and hybrid environments, you need to either compensate for that with more manual approach and more manual tasks and work, which can be costly, or with additional tools that would potentially provide you that consistency. And when we talk about the need for that consistency, the three areas that, based on our experience, based on our conversations, we suggest you should be focusing on are, first of all, know what you need to protect. So data discovery, data classification are essential, and consistency there is very important. It does not make sense to be really good at identifying where this kind of protected data resides in your SharePoint Online if you also have SharePoint on-prem site, which is not protected well enough, and you don't know that certain types of data may be residing there. Someone shared an Excel spreadsheet or downloaded report from your system of record or something like this. And if you're not aware of this, you need to know about that. Same with the alerting. Being able to have consistent and flexible detection across all of your systems is important. It is great that you can get an alert on any suspicious behavior in your cloud environment. But if you are not getting that once your on-prem user account is compromised, that does not help, and vice versa, obviously. And then finally, you do need audit trails for compliance and investigation. Any kind of compliance reporting, if you ever had to go through any sort of audit, more or less formally, you know that the better and more human readable reports you can provide to the auditors, the fewer questions they will have. If you cannot provide them something that is consistent, that is self-explaining to as much as you can get with this kind of technical data, the quicker and less painful these audits will be. And same with investigation. If some of your audit trails are in the cloud, some of your audit trails are in the event logs on your Windows machines, and they are different formats, you need to use different tools to access them and review them. Investigating any incident can become a real nightmare, and there is a high chance of missing certain evidence. There is a question in the chat here from the audience, from James, on what about data encryption? And I totally agree, data encryption is very important. across all the tiers. However, again, it has to be consistent. You need to know what you are protecting with the encryption. So the first step is to identify what is important. Also, data encryption is very often built out in a way that is transparent to the applications and to the users, so that it does not jeopardize the performance and does not inhibit productivity. So in this case, you still need to have all the rest of it, right? You still need to keep an eye open for any suspicious activity, any compromised accounts that may obtain this unauthorized access to the applications. And same with the audit trails. You want to know who is doing what, where, and when for any kind of investigation. So encryption is important, absolutely. So in the last few minutes that I have left, I want to talk a little bit about how Netrix can help here. So what Netrix is providing is the software solutions that align, we think align really good with some of the concepts that are well known in cybersecurity. And we talk about how we can help you with different aspects, different functions of information protection and cybersecurity. Our solutions mostly focus on helping you with identifying what kind of sensitive information you have, where it resides, is it at risk, is any of that overexposed potentially. We are doing that through automated data discovery and classification. We also correlate that with actual user activity as well as with the current permission levels. We can highlight overexposed sensitive data. We can highlight the unused permissions so that you can fix that and bring it back to the least privilege principle. With Netrix Auditor product, we help to identify not only who has access to data, but also how they are using this access, what they are doing. Is this the abnormal activity? And then that kind of information feeds the response and recovery activities to investigate the breach, potentially inform the response decision or even automate the response, as well as make changes to your environment and to your policies based on the details of the incident. And we do that across multiple platforms, both online and on-premises, and structured and unstructured data. So as you can see on this slide, from the audit perspective, we cover a number of data sources, including the underlying infrastructure, like Azure Active Directory or on-premises Active Directory, the Windows servers, the hypervisor layer, the network devices. All of that ensures that your data that resides on top of these services is secure and is consistently protected on all levels. And then obviously we do that for file sharing systems on premises and online, SharePoint online and on-prem, Exchange, and then SQL and Oracle databases. From data discovery and classification, we support all of the data sources that may have data and content, so obviously not the infrastructure piece of that. And just recently, we started expanding this to the cloud data sources such as Google Drive, Box, and Dropbox. So from the audit data sources, the cloud that we include is Office 365. So this includes SharePoint Online, Exchange Online, Teams, and OneDrive for Business. All right. So this is really all the time I had. And for the last couple of minutes, I will just share the few ways you can learn more about Netrix. If you go to netrix.com, it is all there. We obviously provide different options for you to learn more about our solutions. My favorite is the in-browser demo. So if you don't have time and resources to to play with the full trial, or you don't need to dedicate time for a one-on-one demo. If you just want to see a quick look and feel of the solutions, just go to the in-browser demo. Takes, I don't know, as little or as much time as you have on hands. Play with it, and if you're ready to learn more, let us know. So with that, I just want to say thank you to the MDS team and to Samantha, and this is all I had. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we had a few questions. So yeah, and if anything else ever comes up from the attendees, I can get you in touch with the Netrix team, and we can also help you with their portfolio as well. Thank you again, Ilya, and have a great rest of your night, day.
Great. Thank you.
So we are going to move on to our last and final presentation, or panel, if you will. This is going to be our technical session. And I do believe we have our three speakers, Tony, Renato, and Patrick. Are you guys there? Patrick? Tony?
Can you hear me, Sam?
Oh, I hear someone. Hi, is that Renato? Hi, how are you? I guess we're just going to wait for Tony and Patrick. Tony and Patrick, if you are having issues, because you do have to get permission from the audio, you can always call in. But I know you guys are online here, so you can also just message me if you're having issues. It looks like you're muted right now, Tony.
Hello?
Hi, how are you?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Perfect.
Success. Fantastic. All right. You want to jump into this?
Yeah. As long as Patrick is good to go. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, is Patrick and Renato, are they connected?
Renato's there. It's looking mighty spiffy today.
Who's that?
Well, we can start off. I'll message Patrick off to the side. Why don't we start with, getting you guys introduced and stuff?
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. All right. Thanks everyone for joining the conference and the webinar. And I'm going to be the moderator. My name is Tony Carter. I'm a senior principal lead at MDS, mainly focusing on cloud migrations, optimization, app modernization, and DevOps. And today, our topic is going to be securing digital transformation and business applications. In our session, we'll have Patrick and Renato that'll introduce themselves. But essentially, what this session is about is discussing the importance of application and cloud security that's important to everyone in every organization. So we'll be talking about what are the tools for securing the cloud, what procedures need to be in place for the various applications your employees use, how does security teams keep track of the data being used, and how can IT teams get the buy-in from the executives in order to create these new security policies that are so important. As we know, as the cloud and cloud-based applications become the new normal, security has to remain the focus for all of our organizations. And so with that, our panelists, we're going to ask them, who are you or who you are, where you work, your current position, and your technology experience. And we'll start with Renato if Patrick hopefully can get his technical issues resolved, he can jump in right behind. So we'll start with Renato. Renato?
Yes, thanks, Tony. And hi, good afternoon, everybody. Good morning or good evening, wherever you are. My name is Renato Garro. I'm the actual specialist for the Caribbean region. I'm based out of Fort Lauderdale, and I have over 10 years of experience in technology. I started in IT doing cloud computing as a Microsoft 365, or when I used to be VPOS engineer, and then I've been doing cloud computing ever since for work for NetApp and now Microsoft. I've been doing consulting as well in the South Florida area, and have been at Microsoft already for almost 6 years. And my main focus at Microsoft is to work with customers, including commercial and government customers, both in the US and the Caribbean region, to help them with their digital transformation and help them with their cloud strategy, define the roadmap for the best use of cloud, including best practices. And now we're definitely focusing more on kind of like how we can help customers to embrace the new way of doing business after COVID-19. So yeah, looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Great, great, fantastic. Samantha, do you know if Patrick was able to jump in? I don't see him. Yeah, I don't see him. Okay, so I guess he's still having some technical difficulties. So what we will do is continue on. Renato, talk to me about digital transformation. I know it's a broad term, kind of like cloud was about 10 years ago. How does Microsoft classify, or what does Microsoft classify as digital transformation?
Yes, well, at Microsoft, we think about digital transformation as a way to help our customers be more competitive in the marketplace and remain relevant in this ever-changing world where you have innovation and disruption emerging from many fronts, from startups to now global pandemics. So recently, traditional companies have been faced with the tough reality of a post-COVID world where they have to basically reinvent the way they do business. And during this time at Microsoft, we had some customers that were already had implemented all these new technologies, were already using cloud, were ready to embrace and enable their workforce to work from anywhere, where we had other companies that had to respond and really a matter of days to be able to enable all these digital capabilities. So for us, when we talk about digital transformation, we talk about what we call our 4 pillars of digital transformation. The first one is how customers can better engage their own customers, right? So having a 360-degree view of their own customers, being able to digitize all the touch points that their customers have. And the other pillar that we always talk about is how can you better optimize your operations? How can you be more efficient in the way you run your business and the way you use cloud and on-premises resources to be efficient in the way you provide services to your internal employees and to your end customers. We also talk about how can you empower your employees to be more productive through the use of technologies such as Microsoft 365 and other technologies that we made available. So basically, how can you provide the right tools for your employees to be as efficient and productive as they can? And finally, how can you transform your products by basically digitizing all your business processes and capture data from the business processes in let's say an enterprise service bus that you can then use to put data in a data warehouse where you can use this data to get insights from whatever you're doing as a business and all the customer touch points that you may have, and use this data to transform the way you do your business and create new products and services for your end customers. So for us, for Microsoft, we always talk about those 4 pillars: how you empower your employees, how you better engage your customers, how you optimize your operations, and how do you transform your products and services so that your business can be more competitive.
Right. It sounds like an increased agility, right, in order to be able to do business. And these days, I think that's really important.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, with the recent uptake on the mobile work through the pandemic, has Microsoft seen security threats arise? Is there any recommendations that you may have for our customers?
Yes. So on September 29th, we actually released our latest edition of the Microsoft Digital Defense Report. This is a report that we make available like every year. And on this report, we made clear that malicious actors have increased in sophistication over the past year. They're now using techniques that make them even harder to spot and compromise even the savviest of targets. In addition to that, they are becoming really more sophisticated. They're showing kind of like preferences over some techniques, and there's some notable shifts towards credential harvesting, ransomware, as well as increased focus on IoT devices. So among the highlights of the report, we have a couple points that I would like to highlight. So for example, in 2019, we blocked over 13 billion malicious and suspicious mails, out of which more than 1 billion were URLs set up to exploit phishing attacks. We found that ransomware was the most common reason behind our incident response engagements from October 2019 through July 2020. And actually, I've been personally had to be involved in a couple customers that were attacked and had to face a ransomware attack. And yeah, the data got encrypted, and yeah, they had the, basically they were actually looking at the option of paying the hackers for the encryption key so that they can recoup their data. So it was, a very tough situation for any company to go through, especially as you're going through a pandemic. So it's very, very challenging. And also, we have seen that the most common attack techniques used by nation state actors in the past year are reconnaissance, credential harvesting, malware, and VPN exploits. We also have seen on the IoT front that threats are evolving and expanding. For the first half of 2020, we saw an approximate 35 increase in total attack volume compared to the second half of 2019. So with all the attack vectors that we see and the volume, we really need to basically, at Microsoft, we're kind of like preaching the what we call zero trust framework. It's just a new way, and I mean new way for some customers, but this concept has been going on for a while now. But we're really embracing this concept of zero trust, where basically you assume breach, and then you have to really define layers across your security strategies and be able to also give flexibility to your end users so that they can be productive while your data being secure. So there is definitely more information we can share on the zero trust framework, and we can probably add it as additional resources for you guys to read.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, when you think about it, right, the more you go to the cloud, I guess there's more surface area to attack, right? And I did hear a story about a university, and I won't mention who it is, actually had to end up paying the ransom to get the information back from the hackers, and they had to get a negotiator involved, and it was a really big deal, and it was a lot of money, and it was a lot of sensitive information. But yeah, zero trust, that's the way to go. So Patrick is still not here, but in the end, we'll continue on, and hopefully
I am.
we can jump
I'm
in.
on
But
finally, Tony. I had to join for phone. I apologize, guys. Having a little computer difficulties. My apologies.
well, no worries. So then let's back up. Patrick, why don't you tell us who you are? Talk to us about your role at MDS and your technology experience. Let's start there.
Sure. And thanks, Tony. So, as mentioned, I'm Patrick Hall, and I'm the principal engineer here at MDS. And my focus is on advanced analytics, and this goes across AI, machine learning, business applications, operational insights, and really my focus for the last 10 years has been in the financial industry. So that main objective of mine has been helping businesses adopt more data-driven strategies and really empowering roles within organizations to be more data literate.
Great. Well, I mean, talking of AI, in data since you spearhead the advanced analytics practice here at MDS. How does analytics, data analytics, and AI play into what we were talking about with Renato on digital transformation? Can you kind of fill us in on that area?
Yeah, I really think it is, you know, when we talk about digital transformation, ensuring that that organization has an enterprise data strategy is critical. And I think, you know, certainly as we are all aware because of, you know, the pandemic, this year has really been a reality check for many organizations, right? As we saw when the pandemic came on, some of the immediate reactions from organizations were to really kind of pause a lot of their data initiatives. And, you know, what we've seen over the last few months, a lot of companies that had invested in digital capabilities prior to 2020, they are now emerging as much stronger data-driven enterprises. So one of the areas that we believe has really gained more importance has been the ability to tap into real-time insight to be able to scale business models and operations. Sure. And so, you know, organizations with a solid data management foundation are those that are really beginning to thrive in this new climate.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, right? I mean, you have to be able to see it to respond to it, right? And be proactive as well. So predictive analytics, I could see where that would kind of play into that landscape as well. So how do we keep a business compliant at the same time also, you know, have access to their data?
Well, you know, certainly I think one of the things that...
Any thoughts on that?
Can you hear me, Tony? Okay, perfect.
Yep, I hear you now.
I think one of the things, you know, that we approach, particularly, you know, on our engagements with customers here at MDS, you know, ensuring that when we start those engagements with customers, that they you know, that we have a focus on, you know, the technology, understanding some of the regional and locale specific requirements. And when we keep that in mind, certainly we think that some of the approaches that we have when we roll out, you know, specific projects and specific engagements, you know, particularly, I would say over the last few years, right, we've seen, you know, customers really kind of gravitating towards the cloud more and more. And obviously, like we mentioned before, because of, you know, the scenarios we have here within 2020, more and more customers are moving to the cloud. So what we do, like I said, as a part of our engagement, help our customers understand and identify some of those national and industrial standard security controls, and help them develop and improve their cybersecurity defenses. And then really what happens with that, they expect the same level of security, the due diligence that they have with their infrastructure, as well as, you know, when they move those data workloads to the cloud. And so, you know, as I mentioned before, ensuring that those security controls are in place, and particularly, you know, having Renato on the call, you know, working with Microsoft, you know, you do have that ability to know that with a platform like Azure, it does provide really some notable security compliance offerings. And really some of those new security features really support the growing work from home dynamic. So for us at MDS, you know, helping organizations become more data driven includes ensuring that when we move their workloads to the cloud, having that confidence that that platform that we move them to really adheres to the national, regional, and industry-specific compliance certification.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, me as a tech geek, I mean, you can see it. You can see it in the platform, and you can see it in the implementations, the zero trust, as Renato was mentioning earlier. So yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? And Microsoft is definitely doing a yeoman's job of trying to make sure that is upfront and out front for all of their cloud implementations for the most part. And so speaking of customers, and as the companies and customers continue to cope with the COVID, what are, Renato, you and and Patrick, what are you both seeing from your customers?
Yeah, I can jump in there, Tony. So from our side, we have seen an increase in adoption of what we call our first response technologies, including Microsoft 365 suite with solutions such as Exchange Online, OneDrive for Business, SharePoint Online, and Teams, of course. We have seen a significant kind of like increase in demand on the Teams adoption from customers looking to use Teams to just collaborate, work from home, enable the remote workforce to be able to make phone calls, and basically that's been kind of like the main service that we have been helping customers to adopt during the pandemic. We have also seen exponential adoption of our Windows Virtual Desktop technology, which has enabled our customers to basically enable the workforce to also work from home, and just avoid the kind of like the, I guess, the hurdle of having to go through a long procurement cycle to be able to ship out, let's say, hundreds of thousands of laptops or endpoint devices to each worker. And instead of that, enabling a virtual desktop in the cloud that it's secure, it's already connected to your enterprise applications, your data center, and the data is kept at the virtual machine. So you don't have to worry about the endpoint device actually being compliant. You don't need a VPN for it. So it's more secure, and it goes back to our zero trust framework, allowing your employees to be able to even connect from their home computers or home devices, whether iOS, Android, Linux, of course, Microsoft or Windows. So it's been kind of like one of the most successful stories we've seen. And finally, our Power Apps platform has been critical for companies and government agencies to develop like a quick portals where they can do contact tracing, or maybe companies looking to see which employees are safe and which employees are willing to work from home, or which employees are willing to go back to the offices. We have developed different solutions in regards to COVID-19. So for example, for a return to work perspective, there is a Power Apps kind of like a solution that we have developed that we can provide to customers that want to kind of like orchestrate all the go back to the office phase of the pandemic. So there's integrations with Dynamics 365 and all that stuff. So I think those are the highlights from our perspective. But of course, there is an increase in use of just our technology in general. And the Azure platform has been one of the fastest growing for us because of the pandemic. Everybody trying to deploy new services using Azure instead of on-prem, just because of just the procurement. It's just more complicated to do it if you're not at the office, and there's like shipping delays, many complications that companies are having, where in Azure, you don't have to worry about those.
Right. Wow. Patrick, what about your side? What are you seeing?
Tony, I'll say this. I think particularly from the data side, what we've been really seeing, and it's actually growing really fast, is the adoption of unified cloud data platforms. Obviously, as we kind of take a look, and everyone's really adapting to some of the changes that we've seen this year, the need for organizations to make collaboration, to be more productive, and to be able to kind of have these shared experiences across, multiple departments, a myriad of workers who are now disparate, that's really become more important. And, whether it's, like we said, a departmental power user, or maybe a report writer, to, the really more high-end data engineer and data scientist, having a single pane of glass where data-specific tasks can be performed by these remote workers, it's really resonated with our customers, and particularly our existing Microsoft customers. So, if there's an existing investment in Microsoft as well as Azure, being able to integrate some of these data sources and be able to build and continue and share projects has really become an emerging trend. And one of the things I like to kind of compare it to, Tony, is, as we kind of saw with Teams, customers really are increasingly looking for experience that they essentially share these data-driven functionalities in a centralized user experience. And Azure Synapse Analytics, for instance, that's really provided our customers this ease of use and the user experience where now all of these roles can collaborate in this singular, unified space. And so at MDS, we believe what Team did for collaboration, Azure Synapse Analytics will do for data.
Got it. So collaboration, analytics, as Renato said, the data, having the data in one secured location in the cloud and being able to access that data remotely without really compromising the security around that is important. Excellent. Awesome. Well, all right, guys, here's a trick one, right? I want you both to look into your crystal balls, right? And I want you guys to tell me what you see the industry, where you see the industry going in the next 1 to 2 to say 5 years. Renato, we can start with you.
Yes, thanks, Tony. I personally think that the changes that companies had to go through due to the response to the pandemic will probably stay. And I think COVID-19 accelerated what was already ongoing, which is a trend to digitize. And I think we're going to start seeing more digital native companies than ever before. I also think that companies that do not adapt to the new digital way of doing business and embrace the emerging technologies such as IoT, blockchain, cloud, and other technologies will face a uphill battle to remain competitive in the marketplace. Smaller companies have a great advantage, which is that all these emerging technologies are available to you through the power of the Microsoft Azure cloud. And I think this is the great time for emerging companies to take on this challenge and really take on the big companies and the legacy companies to provide better services and products to your customers in a new different way and disrupt the marketplace. And I think it's an exciting time for Microsoft and for our customers.
Wow. Yeah. Awesome. So basically, stay relevant, stay in the cloud.
Exactly.
Patrick, how about you? What's your crystal ball?
I agree. I agree with Tony. Tony, I agree with Renato. I really believe we are looking at the new normal. And I think a lot of the solutions, particularly, as we go forward, the ones that are going to thrive and really find usefulness with customers are the ones that are extensible, the ones that can adapt, because really I think as we go forward, we are probably going to encounter changes, the way that we do work, the way that we interact with our customers, the way that we interact with our coworkers. And in being able to adapt to that, being able to have a solution and a platform that is extendable and is able to adapt quickly to these changes are the ones that are really going to succeed. And much to Renato's point, the customers who've really embraced the cloud, embraced these more dynamic platforms, are certainly going to be the ones that also thrive as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I guess the question goes back to how do we secure our users at the same time being innovative and adapting to new technologies, right? That's the challenge. Renato, what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's a big challenge. From the Microsoft perspective, going back to the Zero Trust framework, we're advising our customers to really change the let's say the legacy way of doing security and embracing our Zero Trust framework. For example, just to give you a little bit more on that, the Zero Trust framework teaches that instead of assuming that everything behind the corporate firewall is safe, the Zero Trust framework assumes breach and verifies that each request as it originates from an open network, regardless of where the request is coming from. So there's this mantra of never trust, always verify, which is more secure and more flexible for your end users. So this security framework will not only make your company more secure, but it will also empower your employees to innovate with their own devices from anywhere and anytime.
Wow. Patrick?
Yeah, and then I couldn't really agree with Renato more. I also think that it really it not only kind of allows developers and engineers to be able to create more. I think the Zero Trust framework also empowers a culture of accountability, right? Being able to have that structure, maybe starting from the least privileged identity, and then being able to go through that process, requesting the access. Now developers can move forward and create, but also on the back end, organizations can feel a little bit more comfortable that they do have a structure in place that, let's just say if, developer A was working on a project and maybe they got elevated, permissions for a moment, and 2 months down the line, you don't need it, right? And we know that is really, it's been a story in IT for a number of years. Now having a structure in place where you can kind of meter, the access to that data and the access to the infrastructure, to me, it allows organizations now to be more secure, but also be able to provide developers with that sense of, hey, we are following and adhering to compliance and really transactional controls. And I think overall, it like I said, heightens developer accountability, but also gives organizations that comfort.
Yeah. So we've gone from basically trust and verify to never trust and always verify.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
good way to
okay.
Yeah.
So guys, I thank you so much. I mean, I've got one last question. I really want to get out of here before we run out of time, and I want to get it in. But if you guys can, but as more and more companies are moving towards the remote workforce and they're allowing the remote work, how does digital transformation kind of play into this shift to remote?
Yeah, I'll take on that, Tony. So digital transformation is more than just a trend. It's a new way of doing business, and allowing your workforce to work remotely is not digital transformation on itself, but it is a way to provide digital capabilities so that your business can remain operational. So to me, digital transformation is more aligned to digitizing business processes, basically digitize your whole business model end to end.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that makes sense. Patrick, what about you?
And Tony, if we are to probably just look at technology as a whole, right, we can always say that technology has really always reflected societal changes, right? As technology resources and professionals, we've always had to support businesses through technology advancements, and that has really been its primary goal. But what was the driving force behind some of those advancements? Really, the societal changes. And so as a data engineer, I see enterprises relying on data more. And, as we become more disparate, as we now have, our resources really kind of spread across, and not really having that, face-to-face, in-person dynamic that we've kind of grown accustomed to, having a more digitized infrastructure, it's going to become a must. And I think data is going to be a very, very big part of that.
Yeah, I agree with that. One thing that I definitely see is I see more of the conversation is, it used to be around remote is kind of like an ancillary thing. It wasn't the main way of operating, where it's like now the conversation is the other way around. It's like, okay, we're going to look at this remote first because it's opened up, right? The thought used to be constrained to the point where it's like it was a challenge to get the C-levels to kind of embrace this remote workforce, right? For fear of lack of productivity, for any number of reasons, right? But now I think that now that they've seen that this actually works, that they're opened up to that. They're like saying, hey, you know what? This can work. This is great, and it has a lot of benefits to it. So I believe it's only continued to go that way. Well, guys, I really thank you very much for your time and for your expertise and your background and applying that to security in this session today. Patrick, thank you very much. Renato, thank you so much. I don't know if there's any questions that we might try to tackle here in at least a minute before we jump off.
There was a question. I'll hand it off to you guys afterwards. We are over, so I do want to make sure we're cognizant of everyone's time, because I do have one thing I wanted to say, and I'll bring it up on the screen if it moves. We do have a raffle that I wanted to do with you guys. For compliance reasons, we're going to draw the names offline for any attendees who stayed on for the duration of this event. We will be drawing 2 winners of an Amazon gift card for $100. So I will be contacting those winners tomorrow. And then obviously I want to say thank you to all our sponsors. So Netrix, Microsoft Datto, OneTrust, VMware, Cisco, Panasonic, and Imperva. We would not have been able to do this event without them. And if you have any questions for any of them or any of our speakers, you definitely have my contact information. But we also have all of our other contact information and social media. So this will conclude our final panel. Thank you again for everyone for joining us. Please be safe and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Take care. Bye.